as well as, whether the postponement of the governors, MPs and MCAs elections in different areas led to voter suppression to the detriment of Raila and Karua, as well as whether Ruto attained the 50+1 vote threshold in accordance with the law. Just to sample 3 of the 9 issues that are going to be determined by the Supreme Court in the presidential petition. Good morning, I am Regina Manyara and we welcome your feedback. You can get us on Twitter on KBC Channel 1 and my Twitter handle is @RayManyara. We start off with that particular update in regard to where we are, what we saw yesterday and what we should expect this morning. Now, the Supreme Court has ordered the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to open ballot boxes from 15 polling stations from 4 different counties, which include Nandi, Kericho, Mombasa, and Nyandarua. The electoral body has also been compelled to provide access to any service at the National Tallying Center, as well as certified copies of reports prepared, and the exercise should be concluded on Thursday, the 1st of September, which happens to be tomorrow.
The Supreme Court has ordered the IEBC to open ballot boxes from 15 polling stations from 4 different counties, which include Nandi Hills, Sinendeti Primary and Tinderet Kanmo in Nandi County, Belgut, Kapsusar and Chepkutum in Kericho County, Jomvi, Mikindani, Ministry of Water Tanks, and Vita, Majingo and Vita Primary in Mombasa County, as well as Jarok, Gavanji and Kiheo Primary in Nyandarua. The electoral body has further been compelled to provide copies of its technology system security policy, comprising but not limited to password policy, password matrix, owners of system administration passwords, system users and levels of access and workflow charts for identification, tallying, transmission and posting of portals, and any APIs that had been integrated, and the list of human interface and controls for such interventions, subject to any security-related issues thereof. Further orders direct the IEBC to give the petitioner supervised access to any servers at the National Tallying Center for storing and transmitting voting information, and which are forensically imaged to capture a copy of the Form 34C, which is the total votes cast, provide the applicant with certified copies of penetration tests conducted on the IEBC election technology system prior to and during the 2022 general presidential election, including certified copies of all reports prepared pursuant to Regulations 10 of the Election Regulations. The IEBC is further directed to avail partnership agreements with its technical partners, list of users, trail and admin access to provide clarity on the IEBC systems and their usage for review and verification, subject, however, to any security-related issues thereof. Lawyer Kato Kigen, appearing for the President-elect William Ruto, had asked the court to ensure adequate security to avoid a repeat of the fracas experienced at the National Tallying Center on the 15th of August.
We would like to request that the court takes on board consideration of the issues of security, considering what happened at the National Tally Center.
We direct the Inspector General of Police, in liaison with the registrar of this court, to provide adequate security during the exercise of scrutiny.
The Supreme Court has also disallowed 3 ICT officials represented by lawyer Charles Kanjama, who were enjoined as amici curiae in the security or scrutiny of the votes. With the pre-trial conference having been completed, this now sets the ball rolling for the presidential election petition hearing, with the judgment expected on the 5th of September.
We will be keeping tabs on that. Now, what issues are going to be determined? Now, the Supreme Court has consolidated 7 petitions disputing the declaration of William Ruto as president-elect into 1, with 9 key issues to be determined. The court will now determine whether the technology deployed by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission met the standards of integrity, verifiability, transparency, among others, and deliver its judgment by Monday, the 5th of September.
Pre-trial conference seeking to challenge the election of William Ruto as president-elect kicked off on Tuesday, with the court seeking to consolidate all issues raised to match the strict timelines. 7 petitions were consolidated, with 2 struck out.
All those petitions raise similar issues and seek similar orders. Therefore, we order that petitions numbers E001, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 of 2022 be and are hereby consolidated.
The 2 are the one filed by politician Moses Kuria and the other by musician cum politician Reuben Kigame. Kuria was seeking dismissal of the suit by Raila and Karua over alleged election malpractices. Kigame, who was disqualified from contesting the 2022 presidential elections, was pushing for a declaration that the presidential nomination and clearance of the 4 presidential candidates was null and void, and that IEBC violated his rights. Among the issues the court seeks to determine are whether the technology deployed by IEBC met the standards of integrity, verifiability, transparency to guarantee credibility of results, whether there was interference of Form 34As from the polling station to the IEBC portal, whether there were differences between Form 34A on the portal, Form 34A at the National Tallying Centre, and Form 34A with the agents at the polling station, whether the postponement of gubernatorial elections in Kakamega and Mombasa counties, parliamentary elections in Kitui Rural, Kacheliba, Rongai and Pokot South constituencies and electoral wards resulted in voter suppression to the detriment of the petitioners, whether there were unexplainable discrepancies between votes cast for presidential candidates and other elective positions, whether IEBC carried out its mandate according to the law, whether the president-elect got 50% plus 1 of all votes cast, whether there were irregularities and illegalities of such magnitude to affect the final result of the presidential election, and what reliefs and orders can the court grant or issue. The court has until Monday, the 5th of September, to deliver a verdict.
In regard to that, the consolidated petitioners include Raila Odinga and Martha Karua, John Njoroge Kamau, Youth Advocacy Africa, and Peter Kirika, as well as Khalif Khalifa, George Osewe, Ruth Wamboi, and Grace Kamau, as well as David Kariokingari, Okiom Tata, Nyakina Wycliffe Gisebe, Victor Okuna, and John Minor, as well as Juliana Nyokabi Chege, Joseph Mutua, Ndonga, and Simon Mwauranjeng. There, the Supreme Court just consolidating the petitions there, boiling down to 9 issues that are set for determination there. And the consolidated respondents include President-elect William Ruto, Rigathi Gachagua, his deputy, IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, Juliana Cherera, Irene Messit, Justice Nyagaya, Francis Wanderi, Abdi Gulie, Boya Molu, and Attorney General. That is it. We're going to be keeping tabs on that. Remember, from 9 a.m. we are going to be live with that particular proceedings there. That includes that votes cast in 14 polling stations are to be recounted. Now, the Supreme Court has struck out the notice of application and pleadings filed by Issa Mansour, representing the 4 IEBC commissioners, Juliana Cherera, Irene Messit, Francis Wandera, and Justice Nyagaya. In a ruling read by Justice Philomena Mwilu at the Supreme Court, the judges unanimously asked IEBC to internally resolve the legal dispute, saying the Supreme Court cannot be dragged into any dispute as to the legal representation of the IEBC. The court has said the 4 commissioners can use the services of Paul Muite and Issa Mansour if they deem it necessary. Ben Chumba with the details.
On Tuesday, 2 factions of lawyers appeared before the Supreme Court each claiming to legitimately represent IEBC in the petition challenging the presidential elections declared by Commission's chairperson, IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati, Commissioners Boya Molu and Abdi Gulie in one faction, being represented by Senior Counsel Githu Muigai, Eric Gumbo and Kamau Karori.
Justice, maybe this would be a good time to give directions on how we should proceed on this rather irritating and irrelevant matter that has been raised when it is quite clear that the record speaks for it.
The 4 dissenting commissioners, who include IEBC Vice Chair Juliana Cherera, Irene Masit, Francis Wandera and Justus Nyangaya, on the other end being represented by Senior Counsel Paul Muite and Issa Mansu in the presidential petition.
I am instructed by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to appear for it on the basis of a resolution by 4 commissioners, and I appear with my colleague Issa Mansu.
We managed to file our responses to those applications, so we will abide by the directions given by the court because we had filed all our responses on behalf of the commission as directed by the commissioners.
Both factions seeking to be recognized as legitimately representing IEBC.
We have stated in our pleadings that we are legitimately representing the commission. Our colleagues have filed the pleadings on the basis of instructions, I believe, by the CEO, who we say the CEO implements instructions from the commission. The commission is a corporate entity. In the absence of consensus, decisions are by majority.
It is not the work of the commissioners of IEBC, whether in majority or in minority, to procure any services. That flies totally in the face of the procurement law in this country. As we sit here now, the 4 who purport to have procured have committed a criminal offense.
There's something that is likely to be lost as my 2 learned friends are fighting. And it is so important, it could compromise really the fairness of the hearing which you have endeavored with so much effort to craft a way forward.
When asked to give directions on the matter, the Supreme Court declined to wade into the matter, asking IEBC to resolve their internal wrangles outside the court.
There is an internal issue which must be resolved by the IEBC, its commissioners, and other internal organs. This court will not be drawn into this dispute in these circumstances.
In a ruling read by Justice Philomena Mwilu, the Supreme Court judges made it clear that the court will not be dragged into the dispute by IEBC.
The notice of appointment filed by Issa and company advocates is struck out. The 4 commissioners are at liberty to deploy and utilize the services of Senior Counsel Paul Muite and Issa Mansour advocate if they deem it necessary.
Well, that issue of exactly which IEBC will the Supreme Court be listening to is an aspect that has analysts in studio over the last 2 days or so have been trying to, decipher there, where we have Wafula Chebukati as the chair, as well as 2 other commissioners having different, or rather differing prayers to the Supreme Court there, while the 4 led by his vice, the Juliana Cherera, also having different prayers there. So this morning, as from 9 a.m., we will know which direction that particular situation has taken, given there that the Supreme Court, the 7 judges there, have given direction that they're not to interfere with the internal wrangles within IEBC, and basically IEBC needs to get its house in order. Now, ODM's Fernandez Odinga Barasa is the Kakamega governor-elect. Fernandez bait off a stiff competition from ANC's Cleophas Malala to clinch the coveted seat. He garnered 192,929 votes against Malala's 159,508. Veteran politician Cyrus Njirongo came a distant third with 5,974 votes. Achola Simon with the details.
I'm going to announce the summary of the total votes cast.
After being postponed twice, Kakamega residents finally got a chance to elect their governor.
Total valid votes cast, as I said, 363,720, rejected 2,174. Total valid votes 361,546. Percentage turnout was 43.
ODM Fernandez Odinga Barasa emerging the governor-elect after fending off stiff challenge from ANC's Cleophas Malala.
Officially, conformity with all the powers conferred to me as the county returning officer by the laws of Kenya, to declare Fernandez Odinga Barasa as duly elected governor of Kakamega County.
Barasa managed 192,929 votes against Malala's 159,508.
Nashukuru wana Kakamega wote kwa kazi ambayo mlifanya kwa kunichagua mimi kuwa gavana wenyu wa pili. Mjipigie makofi.
The verdict ending a resounding turnaround of the Orange Democratic Movement Party in Kakamega County after it clawed back 11 MP seats out of a possible 12 and 48 members of the county assembly out of a possible 60 in the second most populous county in the country. Leaders content with the manner in which the polls were carried out despite massive low voter turnout and pockets of claims of violence and voter bravery.
Walimwaka pesa. Jameni walimwaka. Ni mlikula. Lakini mkajua mahali mtapiga kura. Thank you very much for voting for Asmia. Asanteni sana.
Barasa supporters thronged Kakamega town to celebrate the victory, even as he promised to work for everyone, regardless of their political affiliation. His main challenger, Cleophas Malala, extended an olive branch, even as he conceded defeat.
Despite a number of challenges, all parties involved in this particular postponed election are in agreement that this was indeed a free and fair affair, a good return for ODM, especially after they managed to reclaim the senatorial seat and a number of MPs' position in this county.
Now from County 37 to County 001, where ODM gubernatorial candidate Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir is Mombasa's choice of governor after securing 119,083 votes against his closest rival, Hassan Omar Sarai, contesting on a UDA ticket, who garnered 98,105 votes out of the 220,148 votes cast. Janay Karisa reports.
I, Swalha Yusuf, the county returning officer for Mombasa County, hereby declares that Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir of ID number.
The pronouncement by Mombasa County Returning Officer Swalha Yusuf on Tuesday afternoon ushered in a new reign of power for the coastal town after heading to the polls on Monday.
And 83.
Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir is the governor-elect of Mombasa County, who will be succeeding outgoing Governor Hassan Joho, who was in office for 2 terms.
Ushindi tayari tunao. Sababu za kuwashinda tulikuwa nazo na ushindi tukaupata. Wapende, wasipende, wakubali, wasikubali, gavana wa Mombasa ni Abdul Swamad Sharif Nasir.
Nasir, contesting on an ODM ticket, garnered 119,083 votes in the Monday mini polls after beating his closest rival across the 6 constituencies.
Nimemwambia ndugu yangu Hassan Alijo, the projects that he started and initiated, it is my role to finalize on those projects. Pali kulikuwa na makosa, turekebishe.
Hassan Omar Sarai was flying the UDA flag in the contest, came in second with 98,105 votes. Sarai is yet to concede.
Nataka niwaambie chuma wale waliokuwa katika upande ule. Mimi kama Abdulswamad Sharif Nasir ni wa kwanza kunyosha mkono kuambia ya kuwa hata baada ya matusi yote niko tayari kufanya kazi na yoyote Mombasa tuipeleke mbele.
In the contest, VDP's Hezron Awiti emerged with 875 votes, while outgoing Mombasa Deputy Governor William Kingi emerged fourth, having clinched 712 votes. UPIA's Shafi Makazi got 633 votes, whereas independent candidates Daniel Kitsao secured 402 votes and Said Abdallah with 338 votes. Of the over 641,000 registered voters, only 220,148 votes were cast, with 2,298 votes rejected. The Azimia flag bearer Raila Odinga, Nyali Member of Parliament Mohammed Ali, and former Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko are among leaders who have sent congratulatory messages to the former Mvita legislator who represented the people of Mvita for 10 years. Juni Karisa Mbele from Mombasa County.
Now, the postponed elections there in Mombasa and Kakamega are going to feature in some of the issues that are going to be determined by the Supreme Court. Whether that those particular postponement of those elections in those 8 areas affected in any way or rather suppressed voters in favor of Raila and Karua. That will be determined, and will be here to bring you the live broadcast. Now, Machakos Governor Wavinya Ndeti has urged Machakos residents who are not covered by the National Health Insurance Fund, NHIF, to do so in order to enjoy subsidized costs of accessing healthcare. She was speaking while on her second-day tour of Machakos Level 5 Hospital on Tuesday afternoon, where Wavinya also noted that NHIF was critical in easing the burden of healthcare costs, especially to the majority of rural residents.
The Machakos governor made the remarks after a number of relatives of patients who were admitted in the county's largest health facility pleaded with her to help them clear pending hospital bills. She said her administration will explore a mechanism through which a waiver of the bills could be facilitated.
Nikienda na hii kadi yangu ya mtoto wangu akiwa mgonjwa, nikienda na kadi yangu ya under 18, hiyo kadi yangu inatumiwa kutibu mtoto wangu. Kwa kadi yako inabeba watu wengi. Tunaelewana? Kwa hivyo ninawasihi tafadhali tujaribu kila mtu akuwe na kadi ya NHIF.
In the meantime, Nyandarua Governor Kiari Badilisha has said that his administration seeks to invest heavily on the improvement of the health sector. Speaking during an impromptu tour of JM Karaoke Referral Hospital on Tuesday, the governor observed the health sector was critical in the development growth of the county.
Lakini nataka kuahidi ya kwamba tutashirikiana na timu hii ya hospitali tuone kama ni budget iko chini tuongeze. Kama basi ni madawa inaenda njia ile haifai, hiyo tutaziba hiyo mianya. Kuhakikisha madawa ile inakuja hapa inasaidia watu wetu.
Meanwhile, Kitui Governor Dr. Julius Malombe has called on the Supreme Court judges presiding over the presidential petition to ensure justice is delivered to all parties involved. Speaking when he led county staff, cabinet members and representatives of the business community, youth and PLWDs in an interdenominational prayer session at the governor's office complex in Kitui town, Malombe said Kenyans expect nothing but the true state of affairs regarding the disputed August 9th presidential poll.
We need to know the truth, not necessarily for his own sake, but for the future of this country, for posterity.
And Migori Governor Achilo Ayako has read a riot act to county staff absconding duty and maladministration. Ayako, who reported to work for the first time since he took over as the county boss, said his government will not condone any form of incompetence or lethargy.
We have been mandated by the public to effect changes swiftly and efficiently, and we will not allow our servants to stand on the way. If they stand on the way, we'll get them out of that way.
Now we take a quick breather. We'll be right back with what has been making headlines in the country as well as across the globe. Do not go away.
The fox in the demon tower.
You're going to be my wife soon. And once that happens, no one will dare question you.
Genova is planning to marry the human girl. And he's refusing to marry Suzanne.
Life cannot always be too serious.
Yeah, man, what's up here?
Allah? We've got to take some time off and laugh, 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 and laugh. And we tickle you down with lots of laughter.
That's why I'm saying I'm who is who.
Huh? With satire like no other.
Tell him to bring it on.
Dakachapa.
Under the pressure.
Nothing they can do to stop this abuse.
Good morning. You're watching In the Headlines right here on Good Morning Kenya on KBC Channel 1, and I'm Regina Manyara. This morning, the Apex Court, or eyes are going to be focused on the Apex Court as it begins its first hearings there after determining at least 9 issues are going to be tackled, including whether President-elect, that is William Ruto, garnered the required 50+1 votes in the just concluded August 9th polls. Now, talking about elections is that Paul Chebor of the United Democratic Alliance Party has been elected as Member of Parliament for Rongai constituency. Chebor bet the incumbent Raymond Moi of the KANU Party, with Chama Shinani's Luka Kigen coming in at a distant third. Our senior political journalist Geshoki Washira has more on the parliamentary poll.
The outgoing Solai Ward MCA is the incoming member of National Assembly for Rongai constituency. Paul Chebor, flying the UDA ticket, ousted former President Daniel Moi's son Raymond Moi, who had served for 2 terms in the August House.
The constituency returning officer, Rongai constituency hereby declares that Paul Kitui Rural of ID number 12935586 has been duly elected as a member of the National Assembly for Rongai constituency in the election held on 29th day of August 2022. Dated this day of August 2022. Congratulations.
The UDA candidate Paul Chebor got 27,021 votes, while incumbent Raymond Moi of Kanu garnered 14,715 votes. Former MP Luka Kigen, running on Chama cha Mashinani Party, got 593 votes. The race attracted a voter turnout of 50.2%.
Hii uchaguzi tumetoka mbali, tuavyo tangu nominations, tulirudia kura ya nomination mara 2, tena hii imearishwa mara 3. Kwa hivyo nataka kusema ya kwamba tuko na ushindi siku ya leo kama UDA na kama watu ya Rongai. Nataka kushukuru watu wote wale walipigia kura, hata wale hawakunipigia kwa sababu tuorganize competition, na washukuru sana. Mungu awabariki. Basi sasa tuanze kazi, kusaidia wananchi na kusaidia watu ya Rongai.
David Posson has successfully defended his Pokot South constituency seat after he garnered 28,225 votes against his rival Simon Kalakem of UDA, who came in second with 15,298 votes. Elsewhere, Titus Lote of the Kenya Union Party CUP has been elected as Member of Parliament for Kacheliba constituency.
Member of Parliament for Pokot South constituency, David Posing, successfully retained his seat in the August 29, 2022 Pokot South parliamentary election. The Kenya Union Party candidate garnered 28,225 votes out of the 46,200 cast votes in the constituency. His UDA opponent, Simon Kalekem, came second with 15,298 votes. Independent candidate James Lopoyatum got 2,677 votes. This will be Posing's second term as an MP for Pokot South. He first joined the National Assembly on Jubilee Party ticket in 2017. In the neighboring Kacheliba constituency, Titus Lote of the Kenya Union Party was elected as the new Member of Parliament, beating the incumbent Mark Lomunokol of the United Democratic Alliance Party, with John Lokitare of Kanu coming in third. The KUP candidate got 20,073 votes, while the incumbent Mark Lomunokol of UDA garnered 17,963 votes. Kanu's John Lokitare managed 1,346 votes. 39,382 voters cast their ballots in the Kacheliba parliamentary election. This represents a voter turnout of 77%. The total registered voters in Kacheliba were 51,146.
Now, David Mwalika of a Wiper Party successfully retained his seat as Kitui Rural Member of National Assembly after garnering 19,745 votes out of the 30,089 cast in the constituency. He beat his opponent Charles Nyamai, a former MP who was vying under the UDA ticket. Nyamai garnered 10,178 votes.
Constituency returning officer hereby declare that David Mwalika Mboni of ID number 44-15-798 has been duly elected as a member of National Assembly for Kitui constituency.
It was a joyous moment for David Mwalika, who was re-elected as Kitui Rural Member of National Assembly. Mwalika, who was vying under a Wiper ticket, garnered 19,745 votes out of 30,089 cast votes in the constituency. He beat his opponent Charles Nyamai, a former MP who was vying under a UDA ticket. Nyamai garnered 10,178 votes.
Rejected ballot 166. Percentage of voter turnout 54.71%.
Joyce Mwikali promised to work to deliver his manifesto to the members of his constituency.
But I want to assure the people of Kitui Rural are going to serve them better than the last 5 years.
Mwalika will now be serving as a member of National Assembly for the second term after he beat Nyamai in 2017 general elections.
Na mbunge wetu hapa hivi nataka tusaidie watu wa mama hapa soko, vijana hapa hivi, watu wa nduthi hapa hivi wasaidiwe, wajengewe store lingine kubwa. Naona manduthi zingine hapa hivi hakuna hadi kwenye wanaweka hizo nduthi zao. Sasa wanataka hadi watujengee place Kenya wanawezeka nduthi.
Bara inaenda Angamione Primary School. Tuwekewe stima, transformers zimekwama asifanyi. Atutengenezee barabara. Alituahidi kwamba atatu nini shule ata fence, ataweka chinling na tunini maji borehole.
Kitui Rural constituency, which was established and gazetted in 2012 by IEBC, has 55,000 registered voters. It is one of the 8 constituencies of Kitui County.
Frederick Mubishi of the United Democratic Alliance clinched the Nyaki West Ward seat in Meru County after garnering 2,026 votes. In Nairobi's Embakasi South constituency, independent candidate Francis Kirago got 2,098 votes to win the Kwanjenga Ward MCA seat.
United Democratic Alliance has clinched the Nyaki West Ward seat in Meru after its candidate Frederick Mubishi garnered 2,026 votes.
Kirima Frederick Mubishi of ID number 12896 has been duly elected as the member of County Assembly for Nyaki West Ward of Meru County.
Lewis Kithinji of DEP, which is popularly known as Mbus, followed closely with 1,976 votes, while independent candidate Hilary Mugambi had 1,968 votes. Independent candidate Joseph Moria garnered 1,944 votes. Speaking after being declared the winner, Mubishi called on his opponents to support him.
Wenye tulikuwa tunashindana na wao, pia nimewashukuru kwa sababu tumekuwa na mashindano yenye ilikuwa na nidhamu na kampeni zetu, na hiyo safari yote tumeenda yenye nafaa na hatujai kuwa na vita, hatujai kuwa na shida yote, na Mungu awabariki na tutaendelea kufanya kazi pamoja.
I do hereby declare that Kirago Francis as the newly elected county assembly member of Kwanjenga Ward.
In Nairobi's Embakasi South, independent candidate Francis Kirago got 2,098 votes to win the Kwanjenga Ward MCA seat.
And now that particular story brings us to matters business. And Kenyan motorists is that the government has rolled out a new generation smart motor vehicle number plate with enhanced security features to reduce forgery and enhance tax compliance by vehicle traders. Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i says the new generation smart number plates to be rolled out in 18 months will have holograms, watermarks and laser markers that will aid in stopping motor vehicle fraud and theft.
According to the Ministry of Transport, there are 4.8 million registered motor vehicles in Kenya, ranging from motorcycles to trailers. However, the government says since 2016, it has been looking to switch to new smart number plates amid a rising misuse of current generation number plates in fraudulent activities.
In as far as the registration of motor vehicles is concerned, the new
number plates that are aligned to teams and NTSA programs as a journey towards dealing with insecurity in this country. If you talk to some bankers, they have been left holding logbooks, of vehicles that are essentially registered in a fake manner. Their details cannot be traced. They have already lent out colossal sums of money to, individuals who have since vanished. And because they know that the number plates have been changed and so on, they cannot trace the vehicles even when they were used as collateral and so on. So we're also helping the finance sector in doing that.
Each smart number plate will have a unique identification tied to the vehicle's chassis number to boost transparency in the registration of vehicles. Dr. Matiang'i says the shift to smart motor vehicle number plates will ensure that each vehicle's data is built from the point of entry, making it possible for tracing throughout its life, given that the plates will also be synchronized with identifying code through the vehicle identification number, in line with the Traffic Act of 2016.
We are going to have new, traffic number plates rules, which will cover about 12 categories of vehicles. And so today really is a very big milestone, that what seemed a dream then has become a reality. It's so important to us because it forms a basis of monitoring movement of transport vehicles and other vehicles, personal vehicles.
Today is a major milestone to see this production facility, which is now bringing to life, or even bringing our vehicles and making them finally digital and accessible to our security services, to the insurance, to the banking, so that everybody can now be able to interact and work well with their vehicles.
This comes amid concerns about increasing cases of duplication of number plates by tax evasion criminals.
The new plates are assisting us to synchronize the data sets that we have, so that we not only have accurate identity of the vehicles, but we'll also have accurate information on the background and origins and ownership of the motor vehicles.
FV Schrift, which is a German font that is difficult to replicate, and now 4.8 million motorists in Kenya will now move into international standards of plate making.
There's been a lot of conversation in regard to that particular move by government to introduce the new number plates, with the majority of Kenyans arguing that this should be phased out, or rather phased in or weaned in, simultaneously, or rather over time, such that the new cars that are coming in should be subjected to these new number plates, and those who already have their vehicles already here and are using them should maintain their old number plates. What do you think about this particular move by government? Remember, motorists now have 18 months to comply with that particular directive that is aimed at enhancing security there. That a total cost of 6,000 bob to have the new number plates. There are 18 months to go, and if you do quick mathematics, there are 4.8 million motorists in the country, multiplied by 6,000. Well, as you do that simple mathematics, let's look at matters of energy cost, where Kenya Power will not renew the contract, so to speak. Matters of power there is that Kenya Power will not renew the contract of 7 third-party token vending companies whose contracts expire today. Now, the utility firm has said only commercial banks and mobile phone telecoms will now be allowed to transact power tokens on its behalf. Customers will now buy power tokens from 3 KPLC-owned prepaid and postpaid numbers, as well as its own short code.
Has faced backlash in the past from angry customers and legislators over the manner in which third-party token vendors do the billing for electricity. The 7 token vendors have faced a barrage of accusations from the public, who have accused them of short-charging them. A statement from the utility firm has said from the 1st of September 2022, Kenya Power will bar third-party vendors from handling tokens in part of changes to tackle widespread billing fraud that has rocked the firm in the past. The power utility firm has told customers to only pay their bills and buy tokens through the mobile money platform, locking out the 7 vendors who have been part of the process since 2015. Under the new arrangement, customers will now be able to buy tokens from the KPLC-owned prepaid number 888880, while in the post-paid category, users are advised to make the purchase via paybill number 888888. For new connections, customers have been directed to transact using the paybill number 888899. KPLC customers can also purchase tokens or pay their bills via USSD code *977#, a statement from the utility firm read. The 7 affected vendors are African Vending System, WebTribe, Digital Leo, Dynamo Digital, Lexco One, Professional Digital Services, and Cven.
Now that is said to be a move to just try and ensure that the power distributing company there actually continues making some profits or so, with conversations and other talk there being that the other subscribers or other service providers were robbing off their hard-earned money. But we'll be keeping tabs on that and how then this particular directive will affect service delivery in as far as matters of power distribution. There's been a lot of talk that the cost of power is one of the main challenges, especially to businesses, MSMEs and SMEs, despite government promising that the cost of power is to come down. Now let's delve into matters sports and just have a sneak peek into yesterday EPL results. There we had several matches that were played. Crystal Palace took on Brentford, and that game ended in a 1-1 draw. Fulham against Brighton. Fulham carried the day, scoring 2 against Brighton. Southampton versus Chelsea. Now here it is. Southampton there thrashed Chelsea 2 again. It's single goal there, carrying the day, while Leeds and Everton ended on a 1-1 draw. In as far as Italy Serie A is concerned, we had Sassuolo on a barren draw with Milan, with Inter and Cremonese they're doing 3-1 there. In as far as with Inter being at the lead there, we have Roma against Monza, with Roma scoring 3 against Monza's 0 there. So what are we expecting today in as far as the EPL is concerned? So Bournemouth is going to be taking on Wolves at around 9:30 p.m. tonight, while Arsenal is also going to be playing against Aston Villa at the same time. Manchester City is also going to be taking on Nottingham Forest at 9:30, while West Ham versus Tottenham is going to be taking place at 9:45. Liverpool at 10 p.m. match between Liverpool and Newcastle. Now you have a lot to pick from, especially now if I can pick some of the games that are bound to be very interesting. We have Arsenal there versus Aston Villa, Manchester City there taking on Nottingham Forest, West Ham versus Tottenham, as well as Liverpool versus Newcastle. You have your pick. And after tonight, we're going to be seeing exactly how Manchester United is going to be performing tomorrow at 10 p.m. against Leicester City. Now you're up to date in regard to the EPL as well as Serie A. Remember, further details in regard to what is happening in our sporting world is available on our website, including what is happening in Pakistan, with information being received from the official media houses and government there that indicates that Pakistan, at least a third of it, is immersed in water courtesy of floods. We'll be looking at that on our website, so you can get further details there. Now, before we head to our conversation in regard to what is going to be happening at the Supreme Court tomorrow, I'd want to introduce my colleague there, Victor Olo, to just give us a sneak peek of the daily that he has in studio. Victor.
All right. Thank you, Regina. And must be a very bad day to Joseph. Ben Kamoti, our director.
Le Blue.
Yeah. I think that tells us some of the trouble.
Well, it seems that the forces have connived with you, Victor, there. I don't know if it's because of a mention of Chelsea losing there. 2-1. We do not know, but yes, our producer Ben Kamuti is quite sore this morning in regard to that particular loss. But hey, asiyekubali kushindwa si mshindani. We are going to be looking at what is going to happen tomorrow in a match between Leicester and Manchester United, as well as Arsenal that is going to be playing tonight there, as well as Liverpool. So sports is all about that. Now, Victor, I don't know if you've stopped miming and we can hear you in regard to what we have on our various dailies this morning. To you, Victor.
All right. Let's take a look at what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Supreme battle, wins and losses. The Supreme Court gets down to business today in the Raila versus Ruto election petition after setting the ground rules during yesterday's pre-trial conference. The Azimio chief was given access to IEBC servers, while Ruto and Chebukati scored a win against the 4 dissenting commissioners. All eyes now turn to the lawyers and judges. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Of course, the Supreme Court will have to dig deep into 9 poll issues in question. Very quickly, I think, Regina, you also alluded to that, whether IEBC technology met the standards of integrity, etc., whether there was interference with the uploading and transmission of Forms 34S from the polling station to the IEBC public portal. Third, whether there was difference between uploaded Form 34A and those issued to agents at polling stations. Next one is whether the postponement of the elections in 8 electoral areas resulted in voter suppression to the detriment of the petitioners, and whether there were unexplainable discrepancies between the votes cast for presidential candidates and other elective positions. And again, there is another one here, whether the IEBC carried out verification, tallying, and declaration of results in accordance with the Constitution, and whether the declared president-elect attained 50% plus 1 vote of all votes cast in accordance with the Constitution. Last but not least, whether there were irregularities and illegalities of such magnitude as to affect the final result of the election. And lastly, reliefs and orders to be issued. That is those are some of the 9 areas that will be handled at the Supreme Court. Supreme Court to decide of 9 poll issues. Of course, I've given you that. And again, from the pre-trial conference yesterday, the Supreme Court judges have given the petitioners 3 hours to make their submission today as they start their case at 9 a.m. And thereafter we'll have also the respondents given 3 hours, if I get it right, to respond. Court quashes Ruto's bid to lock out 4 dissenting poll officials, and of course, ruling means that the divisions in the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that is IEBC, will feature during the proceedings. But remember, the judges said that they don't want to get into the IEBC, as that is an internal affair that should be dealt with internally. Raila gets access to servers, ballot papers. The Azimio team has alleged that IEBC systems were compromised, and so they be given, the court also directed the commission to give Mr. Odinga and some of the other presidential election petitioners access to ballot boxes for 15 polling stations for inspections, scrutiny, and recount of votes. That report should be handed over to the courts, submitted to the court on Thursday. It was 48 hours. It was 48 hours. Chebukati wins first round in battle with rival IEBC chiefs. Supreme Court dismisses pleadings filed by Issa and company advocates on behalf of the splinter group. So yes, a lot is going to be happening today. Let me just have a quick one. Top lawyers among 88 to feature in the election petition. Some of the lawyers have switched camps since 2017 petition. Some of them actually did not take part in this petition, in this hearing, saying that it will be a conflict of interest, and so far we have got a couple of them. All right. MP's new medical scheme to cover war and terror injuries. Lawmakers, 1 spouse and up to 5 children below the age of 25 years will be covered in the new plan. Okay, so let me give you this at a glance. This is what the cover will take care of. 10 million shillings, 10.65 million shillings treatment for injuries resulting from war or terrorism. 10 million shillings inpatient per family. 300,000 shillings per family for outpatient, 150,000 shillings for maternity per family, 100,000 shillings for dental per family, and 100,000 shillings for optical per family. Regina.
Now, it seems that the scribes were all reading from the same script, giving precedence to what is happening at the Supreme Court. And I'd want to also just shed more light, or rather give more details as captured by this particular daily, is that in regard to the timelines that were given to the direction where votes cast in 15 polling stations are to be recounted, this happens to be, a petition, part of the Raila Karua petition, that they argued that the August 9th polls were not free, fair, verifiable and accountable, and in their case they are asking the court to declare that any irregular votes should strike off the final tally and a fresh computation on those found to be valid to be done and considered as valid outcome of the presidential election. And this then boils down to the fact that if this indeed by tomorrow, if it shows that there were irregularities and across the 15 and the valid, it could actually tip the scale in favor or of one or in disfavor of the other, and it would affect the final tally there, given that the question that has also been put among an issue that is going to be determined by this particular 7-judge bench, the Supreme Court as is in regard to whether President-elect William Ruto garnered the 50+1 votes as required by law. We'll be keeping tabs on what is going to be happening by Thursday. Now, talking about that, is that what do we expect to see this morning as of 9 a.m.? Different hours, different sides have been allocated hours in which the lawyers are going to be, trying to plead their case. And the petitioners will have a combined total of 6 hours to argue their case. But since Raila's petition will be the lead file, the judges saw it fit and granted his team the lion's share of the 3 hours to make their submissions, while the other petitioners that include John Joroge, Youth Advocate Alliance, Khalifa, Okiya Mtata, Julius Nyokabi will share the remaining 3 hours of 30 minutes each. On the other hand, IEBC President-elect William Ruto was also given 6 hours, which they will share equally with each allocated 3 hours. 4 IEBC commissioners who disowned the results announced by Wafula Chebukati will have 1 hour to share among themselves, while the Attorney General will have 30 minutes to make his case. This is likely what we're going to be seeing today as the sittings enter day 1. And also here we have the question of numbers, with just the concluded 8 areas that had, we were having the elections, the postponed elections there across 2 counties and 4 areas, or rather 4 constituencies and the wards. Now, this changed the tides in as far as numbers are concerned. Now, Azimio numbers at the National Assembly were boosted by winning Kacheliba, Pokot South and Kitui Rural parliamentary seats. That, however, there's a new dynamics, is that we have seen that there are a few members of parliament who have since shifted to Kenya Kwanza from Azimio. We have 7 from UDM, 3 from PAR, 2 from MCC, UPIA 2, NAPK 1, and MDG. This makes a total of 16. However, their exit according to the agreement can only be made 6 months before the elections or within 3 months after the elections. So after November, then the tide is bound to change to have now Kenya Kwanza having a majority at the National Assembly. I'm sure, Victor, you're going to be putting that into perspective when it comes to matters of, supremacy battles there at the National Assembly. We've all had this conversation in the arm of the legislature, the issue of the tyranny of numbers. Unlike what we saw in the previous government by, President Uhuru Kenyatta's government, that held a majority of elected seats both at the National Assembly and the Senate. So how will they work together with no clear majority? That's a question that is being posed, and I'm sure you're going to be tackling it on matters politics in not too long. That's just but a sneak peek of what we have in this particular daily. Something to add, Victor?
All right, yes, on the front page of the Star newspaper, I have court orders recount of 15 votes, of votes in 15 stations. I beg your pardon, court orders recount of votes in 15 stations. Odinga alleges system was hacked into and genuine results doctored. That's what's on the front page of the Star newspaper. Judges grant Raila access to IEBC servers in what would make or break his case. We'll be talking about that later on with Wakili here. Detectives probe UDA agents over hacking amid court battle. Detectives have launched investigations into alleged illegal and unauthorized access to IEBC system by some associates of President-elect William Ruto. The details emerged as the legal battle to nullify Ruto's win began at the Supreme Court, with the judges allowing access to the heart of IEBC tech infrastructure. All right. State launches digital vehicle number plates to fight crime. I've done my math, Regina, and based on around, 5 million motorists or vehicles on Kenyan soil, that would amount to around 14.4 billion shillings. 14.4 billion shillings, 3,000 shillings each. So now you know.
And how much did we have on our deficit in as far as the financial year 2022-2023 to plug? I'm just saying. I'm just asking.
Give us that from the business aspect.
I'm just, it's just a rhetoric. It's out there.
Okay. No answer needed, right?
Yes, none. However, I am of the opinion, I'm a Kenyan and I'm a motorist, I am of the opinion that in as much as this has been made to ensure that we are secure, from even attacks of terror, keeping track, trying to just stem criminality when it comes to, and even tax evasion.
Yes.
I am of the opinion that this should be phased, especially for those who are bringing in new cars to adopt these new features.
Yeah.
Yes. I can imagine someone who has a number plate, and we have this old vehicles, antiques.
Exactly, the junkies.
Already
rotting somewhere in the yard. So what will happen to them, by the way?
I'm looking at even the persons who are in the motor industry right now, and their yard is full, and trust me, there's no way you're going to buy a car without a registered number plate, right?
Yeah.
Are you looking at the investment value that they have? Say you have 50 vehicles in your yard, 50 the list, all of them will require a change in number plates, because I think a majority require that, especially the second hand. I'm just looking at the ripple effect in terms of costing. But hey,
we have
that's
some,
just my opinion.
Some KZZ, KYTs. Do they have to get? I mean, they have never been stolen. The KZZ. They have never been.
Why are you taking a KYXK? Anyway. Where are you taking it?
Anyway,
it's an antique. It is there. It actually, some of these vehicles that you see on the road are of more sentimental value.
Yeah, someone will tell you, I bought this car at 120 shillings.
Yes.
In the 50s or 60s. And that
they're
number
more
plate.
Of antiques, so you can imagine now having to incur that cost.
Or then
there's also the process. You have to register, anyway.
If you want to take your car for a Concorde or Elegance, so what would happen to the number plate? Because number plate registration also matters.
And what Kenyans may not even understand, it also applies to tuk-tuks.
Even do this.
It applies to, do this, motorcycles. It applies to trucks. It applies to tuk-tuks. It's not just SUVs or what you call, personal vehicles out here. It also applies to matatus.
So anyway, Regina, that was just a disclaimer. It was just on a light note.
Yes,
Kenyans to go out there and do what government has ordered. Right?
You have 18 months to do so, though.
Exactly. That was just a disclaimer. Can we wrap up this with the front page of the People Daily in 30 seconds? 9 questions in Raila poll case. Of course, that has been covered in other dailies. Quick one, state unveils anti-theft digital number plate, something that we've talked about. You have got 18 months to do that. 9 queries will make or break poll petitions, says CJ. And Finally, IEBC feuds play out at Supreme Court. Remember what we've just said, that the week-long difference from declaration of William Ruto as president-elect to arena of the court, to stop court, and that is playing out. And of course, Azimio stamps its authority in Mombasa and Kakamega and other elective positions. That is just but a sneak peek of what we had on local dailies. More on this is coming up next when we are heading now for the Supreme Court battle starting at 9. And of course, we have got Wakili in studio to help us just understand the matters at hand. Regina.
Indeed, as we promised you, we're going to be keeping tabs on that, and that live broadcast is going to be coming to you live from 9 a.m. where we have our reporters Serafina Ruby as well as Ben Chumbe, who are at the Supreme Court to just bring us up to speed with any developments therein. Remember, whatever outcome after the 5th of September, you and I still remain Kenyans. So we'll keep the peace and keep the faith. I wish you a pleasant viewing ahead. Now we take a quick breather. When you're back, we're going to be putting all those issues into perspective with Victor Olo. Do not go away.
There. Good boys gone bad. Eric Omondi has evolved from being a comedian to now being the king clout chaser.
How does a gospel artist make money?
Jaguar wept again. As a celeb, as a followers, but it's a time for artists to make bank.
Yes. How is your relationship with Zari, considering that she dates young?
These are accessories. They do not make
slap the guy.
Yo, what's up? My name is Ted Josiah.
Oh, mashallah.
You sing about serious issues, it will not trend. If you sing about Abiambosi.
Now. Bahati hata kuwa na machozi. Willy Paul ndo alikuwa anatoa machozi.
For your beat these boys with stones. Let's all be logic. Yesu ashukangi chini analeta pesa.
Musicians are missing the point.
Do we sip water?
You are watching Pop Culture with Adhiambo with a Y.
This is the last time you'll get away with something like what you did last night, Tobias. You will not have another chance.
I'm not going to beg you, Lionel, never. You are going to give me everything that I want.
I am also a Murat. Your grandpa, Gonzalo Murat, is my dad.
There's no way that I'm going to do what you're asking me. And I would rather die than tell anyone about that secret. I will finally be a free woman and I'll be living with a friend.
Welcome back. Now let's talk about matters Supreme Court and what you should expect from 9 a.m. The Supreme battle here begins at the Supreme Court at exactly 9 a.m. and the final verdict expected on Monday, that's the 5th of September. Let's just get into it, and in studio I have got Wakili Atieno Ogola, who is an advocate and managing partner at MMA Law LLP Advocates, who is here to help us just understand some of the jargons and whatever is happening at the Supreme Court today. Wakili, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
I saw you at the Supreme Court yesterday.
Yes.
Or that was not you?
It was me.
What was happening there?
So yesterday we were having the pre-trial conference, and of course I was representing my client, who was an interested party mentioned in the Ruben Kigame and the Okiamtata petitions. And of course we had the directions from court that said, of course, an interested party cannot be enjoined to the petition as per the Supreme Court Presidential Petition Rules of 2017. So we had to abide by that position, and of course now we will just be watching how the proceedings will be going on. Yes.
It seems that so many interested parties are not enjoined in this case this time around. Why?
Yes, as I've said, the Supreme Court Presidential Petition Rules in 2017 clearly state that an interested party cannot be enjoined to the petition. Okay? So if you're a presidential aspirant or you're a voter who is aggrieved by the outcome of the election, the best way to actually participate in the presidential petition is by filing a petition as a petitioner, or if you're named as a respondent. Okay, so the jurisprudence that came out yesterday as from the Supreme Court directions is that one can only participate either as a respondent or a petitioner or as an amici. Okay, and an amicus, we of course we know, is a friend of the court who aids the court through their expertise to be able to arrive at a good decision that is favorable to the respondent or petitioner. Yes.
But we all know that friends of the courts play a key role in any petition.
Yes.
Why did the courts in 2017 decide and say no, this time around, no way, only the petitioners?
Okay, of course, we can actually evaluate the circumstances and see, for example, in this petition, the major issue actually is regarding technology. If you heard yesterday when Charles Kanjama, Senior Counsel, was asking the court whether his clients, who are technology experts, can be part of the scrutiny, the court declined and said, of course, their role in the proceedings is regarding just to be able to help the court to understand the issues regarding technology. So the central focus right now is on technology, and you've seen even the 9 issues as framed are revolving around whether the technology deployed was sufficient, whether the uploading of the Form 34As to the portal, there was interference with that. So the major issues are surrounding that, and of course lawyers are not IT experts, and remember in the last election, of course, the issues still to do with the access of the servers, the algorithm issue was not keenly looked at, and I'm thinking right now the court wants to appear to be fair and employ the various people with various expertise to be able to help the court arrive at a suitable decision. Yes.
So how do courts come up with this somehow a themed version of what to look at? Because each and every person will have their own version of what happened, the transmission, voter apathy, you know, etc, etc. So how do the judges arrive at a thematic area to dwell on?
Yes, of course, you see, first thing, they have to go through the petitions and understand what are the underlying issues, okay? And once you understand the underlying issues, there are cross-cutting issues, there are things which are not in contest, and then there are the contested issues. Now, how they arrive to the final issues to determine are the things that are contested in all the petitions, and that's why you see in the 7 petitions that were consolidated, the Honorable Chief Justice clearly said that the prayers were similar.
They were similar, and we're looking for the same results.
Exactly.
Yes.
You see, so, and of course now you identify what is each party contesting regarding the elections that happened on August 9th. Okay. There's the issue to do, of course, with the uploading of the forms, whether there was voter apathy regarding the places where the elections were postponed, whether actually the person was announced as the president-elect met the constitutional threshold of 50+1, whether the technology deployed was as per the required standards. So all those issues are identified from the pleadings filed, and of course the court has its researchers assigned. So the researchers right now have a heavy duty to be able to read through all the petitions, because one issue the court does not want to appear is to be slack or to be unaware of what the petitioners are raising in the various petitions. So they have to go through them, scrutinize them, and then arrive at the major issues which are in contention. Yes.
It must be a long day ahead.
Yes.
so to speak, the real battle begins at the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
We are likely to see some of the, perennial lawyers, or so to say, taking it to the dock this time around.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can say that even the judges, some of them are experienced. They've been there before, from 2013, when the Supreme Court was established to date.
Yes.
But Chief Justice Martha Koome is sitting there for the first time.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, as an outsider, what do you think is now running through her mind?
Of course, one thing that you should always understand when you're a judge, and of course I'm sure she's aware of, that this is not only a legal issue, but there's also politics at play. So even as she's trying to see on how best to handle the issue, she understands the atmosphere that Kenyans are in. Kenyans are right now anxious because they don't know whether they have a president who they can term as a current sitting president, or whether the decision of the court will affect the outcome, therefore maybe resulting to a rerun, whether there will be change of guard. You see, all those things. So as the president of the Supreme Court, I'm sure she has all these intervening factors in her mind. And of course, she knows that the history of Kenyan politics and Kenyan elections, and of course, how Kenyans have resulted to seeking electoral justice through the courts. After post-2007, through the Kriegler report, one of the major issues, that came up is that we should embrace electoral justice systems. So Kenyans have decided this time not to go to the streets. I think this is one of the elections where we've seen Kenyans really restrain themselves after the elections. Okay, so she's cognizant of the fact that the decision that will come out of the Supreme Court will
have a ripple effect either way.
Yes, either way.
Yes.
So of course due procedure has to be followed. Everything that the petitioners and the respondents are bringing out has to be considered in light of the law. So I'm sure she's very keen to ensure that as the first in her first term, or her first time handling a presidential petition, she appears to be fair, because we say in law justice should not only be done but be seen to be done.
Yes.
So I'm sure she is cognizant of all those factors.
You can imagine you are going out there to Mama Mboga. She doesn't understand what's happening at the courts, or our friends out there, the border guys, they're not aware of what's happening at the courts.
Yes.
One question that people do ask me, Victor, kwani tutarudi kwa debe? Ama unaona koti inaamua aje? I'm like, boss, I have no idea. So what basically should we look at on 5th of next month?
You see, Victor, it's hard to actually predict the outcome of the court. In cases before the court, it is based on evidence. Okay?
Yeah.
Our Kenyan legal system is largely adversarial. The one who has the best evidence wins. Okay? So what can be the outcome, for example, if the presidential election that was held on August 9th is upheld? Of course, the president-elect declared will be sworn in, and of course, government will be formed, and the other processes continue. But then, if the elections are nullified, of course, we'll see whether the Supreme Court will direct that fresh elections be held, or one of the prayers I've seen in one of the petitions was that the person who was declared as, or rather who should have been declared as president, be given the certificate. Okay, so there are various outcomes that we would expect, but it's solely dependent on the evidence that will be presented, the oral presentations that will be made as from today, and how the judges will use the law to be able to marry them with the facts and actually arrive at a decision.
Yes. Can a Supreme Court decide and say, okay, we've had you, thank you so much, aya, ka huku. So this is what we're going to do. Because of candidate X got this and candidate Y got this, the winner is this. Can the Supreme Court say that?
Not actually, because you see, one of the issues that have been framed today, as you've seen, is whether the president-elect or either of the parties attained the 50+1. Okay, so one of the issues that have come up in the prayers of most of the petitions is whether the irregularities actually affected the results. If the Supreme Court is able to find that the irregularity affected the results, then actually it can show that there was no clear winner, then a fresh election be held, because then the process was not as per the constitutional threshold. Okay, we know that the constitution provides of how a free and fair election should be held. So if the procedures were not upheld, and that's what came out clearly in the Raila 2017 case, that due procedure is important. You cannot only say that election is free and fair because voters lined up, they voted peacefully, but what about the verification and the tallying? And that's one of the also major issues that the Supreme Court will look at. It was the verification and the tallying process after the election as per the constitutional threshold. Okay,
we cannot have 100% positive results in an election, even in the US, other jurisdictions. But what is the margin of error that the court will be looking at? Because there should be plus or minus to say, okay, much as we cannot get 100%, I think we did this.
Yes, of course, we acknowledge, of course, that there cannot be perfect elections. Even the US elections, there were issues of hacking.
Yes.
But, of course, there are the various procedures which should be followed. And if you look at Section 39 of the Elections Act, it says that the National Returning Officer, who's Chebukati, in this case, is allowed to announce results before all the results have been received, if he has reason to believe that the results which have not been received will not affect the final tally. You see, so those are the certain measures which have been put within law that, of course, we know, yes, there are various issues regarding elections, and, of course, we understand the technicalities, but then if you have reason to believe that the results which have not come in will not affect the final tally, then you can announce the results. So the issue is, and I think that's why we had the 4 commissioners talk about opaqueness.
Yes.
They do not know them as commissioners, and it's going to come out clearly.
Was that their reason?
No, I'm saying, for example, in their statement that they said that there was opaqueness during the final stages of tallying. So maybe they were referring to, or which I do not know, we will see through the evidence that is presented, whether the results that had come in last, they were to significantly affect the final result. You see, them they said, as per their statement, which I remember correctly, that they were not involved in the final tallying, therefore they do not fully know that the outcome of the results from the, I think it was between 27 or 20 to 30 constituencies. So if we look at those constituencies and see that those results could not affect the final tally, then we can have reason to believe that indeed the president-elect was duly elected. But if those results are tallied and they bring the margin of different, let me say, nature, maybe now it shows that maybe Raila should have won, or both candidates have attained 49 and not that 50 plus 1, then you know that, of course, could actually be a ground to nullify the election and order for a rerun. So what I'm saying basically, Victor, is that the evidence presented, and of course we know there's the scrutiny that's going to happen, that is also going to show whether there were irregularities during the polling cycle. So all those things will actually help the judges arrive at which decision is best.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the Supreme Court is allowed to nullify elections, to uphold an elections, and also order for a rerun.
For a rerun.
Yes.
3 circumstances.
Yeah.
Okay. In your own perspective, what do you think is so different in this sitting starting at 9 a.m. compared to the previous petitions?
Let me say, if you look at this current petition, of course, it came out yesterday that in the previous petitions, there were fewer petitions that have been filed. This time, there are many petitions that have been filed regarding the same issue. And of course, it shows that many people had an interest in the person who's going to be president. That is very clear. Okay. And also, one other issue that, let me say, it's not a difference, it's a similarity. We are still seeing the major issue of technology. the technology deployed by the IBC during elections, and I think now it has to bring up serious discussions whether technology can really deliver free and fair elections, or which type of technology then should we use.
Yeah, exactly. That is what's the question. In fact, most people are saying we are deploying technology left, right, and center. In 2017, we used the KIM system kits. This time around, only a paltry number of 200 just failed. Now, that's a small number compared to 46,000, 229 polling stations.
Yeah.
But then, IEBC should now, based on what you're saying again, the kind of technology should be deploying in an election. Then where are we as a nation?
I think for me the major issue then now, if we look at the technology, it's now the security of that technology, okay? Because there's something called digital footprints. You're able to see who accessed what at what time. And you see if the servers are also analyzed, you're able to see whether there was unauthorized success. So maybe the technology could be okay, but are the security measures enough? Yes, exactly. And for me, one thing I'm looking at also maybe is exploring the idea of using blockchain technology in elections, because blockchain has showed that it has minimal security breaches. And of course, because we know elections are managed not only by technology but by human beings who in Kenya have shown that they don't have ethics. You see, so we cannot police, we cannot use the law to impart ethics on people. Then let's ensure that our technology is tamper-proof, so that if anyone tries as much as they would like to interfere with the technological processes of elections, then it is minimized. Okay, so the major actually similarities is just that the issues are largely the same, but the issue of technology still runs through, and the players are the different people. And of course we are seeing more advocates participating in these election petitions. So I'm saying that the major issues are the same, but the issue of for example, the tallying being final at the polling station, I think that was settled in the previous election, so that is not an issue right now. Okay, so at least there are.
So the problem starts from the tallying, from polling station now to the main tallying center.
Yes. And if you look at one of the issues that has been framed is whether the Form 34 is uploaded at the portal were the same ones from the polling station. Okay. So one thing I've noticed in Kenyan elections, the issue is never about the voting. Once the tallying and the verification begins, that's where all hell breaks loose, because people fail to follow down the laid down procedures. For example, at the polling station, if agents are supposed to sign and supposed to ensure that the various processes have been followed up to the constituency tallying center, then now to the national tallying center. So it's the processes after the voting that actually determine whether an election is free and fair. And of course we know in Kenya and everywhere around the world, politics is about numbers. So anyone can manipulate the numbers to favor them, and the numbers count during the tallying at the polling station, and then from the polling station to the county, or rather the constituency tallying center, then the national tallying center.
Wakili, let me just ask you, based on what you've said, voters will wake up at 3:30, 4 a.m. to go and line up and vote.
Yes.
They'll do their civic duty and say, Mimi nimemaliza. I still have my ink, by the way. I voted. But the question someone will say, why do I have to go and vote if my vote will not count? Because I will cast my ballot, and then in between the process something happens. Therefore, my number or my vote will be rendered so, quote unquote, useless. Do you really think politicians have this in mind, that Kenyans will go to the ballot every 5 years, but then they will feel demoralized to go back again because they feel we voted, but our voice was not respected?
Actually now, it puts the burden on the professionals in terms of the lawyers and the legislators to ensure that the electoral laws favor the let me say the insight of the voters, because you see it's towards the elections, like about 8 or 12 months, so that we see many amendments to the electoral laws coming. And one of the ways, of course, elections are governed is through the laws themselves. How do we ensure that each vote will count? We have to look at our laws. Do they actually uphold or favor a free and fair election? okay? Because one thing that's coming out right now, and even we saw in the Mombasa and Kakamega gubernatorial elections, there was voter apathy. People are asking, will their vote really count? Will, of course, the tallying be tamper-proof or happen according to the laid-down procedures? So I think there is need actually to look at our electoral laws and review them. There is need for the IBC, or rather, let me say, stricter penalties to be imposed on those who actually infringe on those electoral laws, from the returning officers to the presiding officers and all the staff, IBC staff engaged in managing elections. There should be stricter enforcement mechanisms so that people can know that if you fail, you've been trained and you fail to actually carry out elections as per the law, then you're liable in a certain way. Okay? So I think Kenyans can only have trust in the electoral body when the electoral body actually plays by the rules. And that's why I'm saying procedure is everything. If you, even in employment law, for example, if you fire an employee without following the procedure, the employment court will still find you as an employer liable.
Okay, and on that note, because you're talking about procedure and I don't want to be found liable, let's take a break by my employer. Let's just take a break. We still have so much more. I have got Atieno Gola, who's an advocate of the High Court. We still need to understand many things, even as we head to the Supreme Court, where the battle will begin at 9 a.m. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Okay.
To the Second Chance TV game show.
Tough questions.
Virunga National Park is located within which mountain ranges? Aberdare. Aberdare? Is that your final answer?
Tough challenges.
3, 2, 1, go!
It's a survival for the smartest.
10 seconds to go. Who is the current president of Malawi?
Jakaya Kikwete.
Wrong
answer. That is the wrong answer. Does it border to the east? Nakuru. Nakuru County. Nakuru County, you get 2,000 bob.
Premiering soon on Channel 1.
Akili, Akili, this is Akili.
Hey there, friends, what time is it?
What should Akili say to greet little lion? Can you read the word?
Oh! Don't worry, Bush Baby. You can draw it again.
Akili, Akili, this is Akili. She has a secret.
Tell us!
When the sun goes down, Akili goes to sleep. And she enters a world where all the animals speak.
Ukiniangalia mimi mtu kununua second hand?
You look second hand yourself right now.
Mimi nakaondieka. Niangalie hivi, nakaondieka.
Not with those. Maybe with the tummy. No.
But Tosha.
Huyu hata tujuani. Do you know me?
Are baba.
We know each other.
Iko saying lines hapo.
When husband ama ni houseboy? Houseboy. Nini wewe ila kusumbua?
Wako ha?
Yes.
Jambo.
Fine, thank you. Oh my God. No. Let me talk the truth and accept the devil, please. Please.
Babyface.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like that. Yes.
Babyface.
Yeah.
Ulionaje kazi yangu? Skills zangu za uzaji zikoaje?
You are excellent.
Wewe mzee. Hatuko hapa mchezo.
Ni kweli hata nani.
Sasa wewe ukisha si uongee vile unaongea.
Ni kweli.
Okay, all right, welcome back. Trying to get some legal jargons here. I've been called amicus. Welcome back. My name is Victor Lo, and I still have Atieno Gola, who is an advocate of the High Court. We are still understanding what should be happening at the Supreme Court. Of course, it's fully packed. 3 days or 4?
Yes, 3 days.
3 days.
Yes.
So to speak of the timeline, the real battle begins today.
Yes.
And it will run until Friday, when the judges will retire to make their ruling and judgment to be delivered on Monday.
Yes.
But then there is this version of the timeline that is given by to the Supreme Court constitutionally. Do you think it's enough?
It could not be enough, yes, but the nature of a presidential election, we cannot put Kenyans at bay for so long. You see, and that's why generally election petitions have very stringent timelines. But of course, the presidential election petition is given that short amount of time so that normalcy can be resumed as quickly as possible. And because we saw even when Kenyans were waiting to hear who was the president-elect between the 7 days which the national return
impatient.
Exactly. You can imagine now if you extend it to 21 days for a presidential election petition to be determined. I think people will be, I think Kenyans have really shown us that they're very impatient people. So of course the constitutional provisions actually understand the nature of a presidential election and the stakes that are involved. Then the constitution just gives them 14 days and the time could be short, but of course this is the time that the Supreme Court judges get to work a lot, because we know that not all matters on appeal in general cases are allowed to be at the Supreme Court. Yeah. So the time is limited, but it's of importance.
It's okay.
Yeah.
This is the second time. The first one was in 2017 that the petitioner was granted that access to access the servers of IEBC.
Yes.
This time again, Raila Odinga, who is the main petitioner, have also been given that leeway to access the servers, quote unquote, and to verify votes from different polling stations. Do you really think this is an indictment to the IEBC?
You see, one thing that I've said previously, that we have shown that we don't trust our systems, our constitutional bodies, okay? And if someone is alleging that there was issues to do with the uploading of results and how the people who accessed the various technology were not authorized, then we have to open up and see, because you see, transparency is one of the electoral principles of the electoral system. You see, if there is a doubt as to the transparency of the elections, then let the burden be on IBC to show us that indeed there is no issue. Okay? So I think, you remember in 2017, the IBC really did not want to open the servers. I hope right now they will. And of course, if they show us that there was no issue, then we can start trusting them. You see, but if they show us that, or they give us even reason to believe that there could be doubt or there could be the infringement of the various principles, then of course let them actually be the ones to show us that everything was conducted as required.
Wakile, there was a case of the representation for the 4 dissenting commissioners at the IEBC, and the court said, you know what, that's an internal issue, you have to deal with it.
Yes.
What does that really show?
Okay, you see, there are various procurement procedures to be followed when you're listed to represent parastatal, okay? Then that's why if you saw the learned senior counsel, the former Attorney General Githu Muigai, say that as per those procedures, he is the one allowed to represent the commission, okay? Then how can the 4 commissioners put some other advocate to be representing them who was not listed to be among the people to represent them? So what the court was trying to say, we cannot come and involve ourselves in the internal procedures regarding representation of a parastatal, because there are clear laid down procedures on how one arrives at the advocate to represent a parastatal. What they said then, these commissioners, maybe in their own individual capacity, can procure the services of Senior Counsel Paul Muite and Issa Mansour. Okay? And And I think that was the best direction to go, because it would have been absurd to have two advocates representing the same body, and yet, of course, we know there are already clear divisions.
And then there was an issue of them coming as individual commissioners or as collective commissioners of IEBC.
Yes.
What was dealt with by the court yesterday?
And I think if you look at what the directions of the court were, is that they could actually procure the services of these other advocates, but on an individual capacity, because they cannot purport now to act on behalf of IEBC and procure the services of this commissioners.
Yes.
You see, so, and of course this is one of the issues that actually will come up during the petition, whether of course as the 4 commissioners they are still the majority and can decide on certain things, but let us see how it will play out in court.
Are they petitioners or respondents?
There are respondents in part of the cases, but if you remember what one of the advocates raised is that how they responded, it sort of raised other issues that they could have raised in a petition.
Oh, yes.
You see?
Yes.
So, of course, we'll see how the court will handle that issue. But in major of the petitions which were consolidated into one, they were respondents. They were all listed as respondents in their individual capacity and as a commission. Yes.
Okay. Let's go back to what I asked in terms of what's a bit different, because this time around we are seeing only 4 lawyers will be given time for the petitioner, and the respondents will also get 4. And of course, other interested parties will get number of and lawyers. But the main players here, the petitioner and the respondents, will get 4. This is a complete departure from what we had in the previous 2 petitions in 2013 and 2017. What necessitated this?
Of course, we know how lawyers have a boss. Okay, verbose meaning that they are very generous with words.
You're talking about yourselves. Okay.
Yes, and the reason I think in her wisdom the Chief Justice did that is because, as I've said previously, the issues being canvassed upon are largely the same. Okay?
Yeah.
And right now, of course, there were a lot of, let me say, procedures to be adhered to. For example, there's a scrutiny, which after the conduction of that scrutiny, they have to evaluate the report. You see, so there are various issues that they needed to consider. And I think it was best if they, of course, still allow the various petitioners and respondents to be represented as they would wish, but limit the time so that our petitioners, advocates can converse on the major issues and not go giving stories. We heard about in the previous, let me say, 2017 election, there was an advocate who was saying, giving different analogies. Let me not say it because, of course, we could know who it is. Yeah. But we want to narrow down to the major issues and arrive at a decision as soon as possible. Yes.
There is this word, the law is very clear.
Yes.
We hear it a lot. I think even a class 3 pupil will tell you, the law is very clear. We are seeing a different face of the Supreme Court. 3 learned ladies and 4 men on this end. Of course, that's an odd number.
Yes.
All right. What would you think the personality of CJ?
The personality.
When the mic is on and when she speaks.
One thing I have loved about her, and it was very clear from yesterday, she is in charge of her courtroom. And that is very important because sometimes, let me say this as a woman, sometimes people would feel that they can intimidate you to sway. And of course, you see, if you understand the process of a trial, there's also the psychological war and the emotional war that someone could wage on someone, maybe on the bench, or we know there are counsels who are known to be bullying the bench. We know them. So, of course, she clearly showed she is in charge of her courtroom. One thing I also liked, she showed that she has set down rules, and anyone who does not abide by those rules cannot be accommodated. For example, in the directions, when one of the councils had requested that more advocates be allowed to act, the clear directions from the GCJ was that they will not add more advocates to any party. That clearly shows that they are going to follow a procedure and they have stick to that procedure, even in terms of the people being admitted into the courtroom. If we said it was 4 from the beginning yesterday at the pre-trial conference, that's how it's going to be all through.
Yeah.
But of course, in due consideration to the fact that now they've said the commissioners can decide whether to be represented individually, so they will factor in that in today's hearing. So I like that she has shown she's firm, she's in control of her courtroom, she's trying her best to adhere to the laid down procedures, and she's also accommodative. We saw how, despite the fact that Professor Wajakoya was not a party to actually give an oral presentation, she allowed him to make his grievances heard. You see, that's actually part of what a fair trial constitutes. You see, so she's really trying her best to show the Kenyan public that they can have confidence in the Supreme Court of Kenya, and that is very important, because when anyone is aggrieved, they run to the courts.
Yes.
They run to lawyers. So Kenyans should see that we can trust our processes in the judiciary, and as the president of the judiciary and the Supreme Court of Kenya, she is exuding confidence in Kenyans.
Wakili, there are 3 things here. There is law, there is democracy, and governance.
Yes.
And when you look at Kenya, Kenya sits at a very advantageous position in East Africa or even globally.
Yes.
Do you really think Kenyans are treating such kind of processes? For example, we go to an election is contested, we go to the Supreme Court, as was like in 2017, it was nullified, people went for another cycle of election. Do you really think Kenyans really appreciate this as a growth of democracy in our country?
I think they do, because if you compare with some of our neighbors, people say Kenyans, we have a lot of freedom. And I think also they have come to appreciate that in some other African countries, and we saw Kenya was the first African country to annul a presidential election.
Absolutely.
So of course that put Kenya on the map, and Kenyans really did see and did appreciate that in Kenya we have laws that are starting to work for us. If they doubted, now they saw. And now, of course, that's why Kenyans even have maintained their calm after the elections. If they did not have faith in the Supreme Court, they would have gone to the streets, as has been the normal occurrences.
Right.
But they have been told to keep calm by both divides, and they have decided, let the courts decide on who was the rightful winner and if there were any irregularities or what was the outcome of the election. So the conduct of Kenyans in these elections has shown that they have faith in the democracy that we are struggling to grow. Of course, there's still room for improvement, but it shows that there are gains, and our constitution is actually working for us, and we actually do not really need to amend our constitution, but to fully implement it to the latter.
Which is something that is still under process, and you know, even the drafters of the constitution said that, well, we've done our bit, but we'll still need more time to fix some of the loose ends. You look at Kenya, we have got some brilliant brains, yours here included. I'm told that even international jurisdictions procure lawyers from Kenya to go and work for them in other cases.
Yes, that's true. That is very true. And even in the sitting that is going to be happening right now from 9 a.m., you have Commonwealth judges who are coming to benchmark and see how we are conducting our processes. So of course that really shows that Kenyan brains are really sought for out here. So we owe that to, of course, the various law schools in Kenya and our training as advocates.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the issue of the 9 issues here, what the Supreme Court will decide. One of them was the technology verifiable, secure, and transparent. That is one of them, something you talked about. So it's based on technology.
Yes.
Okay. In 2017, it was about the transmission of results.
Yes.
Number 2 is, well, Form 34 is intercepted before landing in the IEBC public portal.
And that's also technology.
Technology.
Yes.
The third one is whether there was a difference between Form 34S on the portal and the Form 34S received at Bomas.
That's now transmission.
Transmission.
Yes.
Okay. The fourth one is whether the postponement of gubernatorial election in Kakamega and Mombasa counties resulted in voter suppression. Well, this is something that I want to talk about, but I don't want to make your judgment or just prosecute the case. But it's something that we also discussed here with other guests in studio, that a lot of voters were disenfranchised in some sort of way to bring what we saw yesterday as voter apathy. For example, Mombasa has around 800,000 registered voters, but what we had yesterday was around 200,000. What is your take on that?
You see, as much as we would want to run away from that conversation, the truth is the voter turnout was not as expected.
It was bad. It was bad.
Yes.
Right.
And you see, one thing that could have largely influenced was the postponement of the elections. Because you see, at that time when the elections were postponed for these specific positions, Kenyans in all other parts of the country were voting for their 6-piece electoral positions. So, of course, we cannot deny the fact that there could have been, so let me say, change of mindset when these elections were postponed. And of course, now looking at even the outcome of the, of the results, could it also have affected the psychology of the voter? You see, so there are many issues at play here which we cannot ignore. Of course, we will only maybe say that it has happened and we take the lessons, but we see that certain actions during elections affect the voter turnout, and during, before, and after. Okay, so that would be my take on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next one is whether there were unexplainable discrepancies between the votes cast for the presidential candidates and other elective positions.
And just allow me to comment on that. And that is a very important issue which I was discussing with some of my colleagues. You know, it beats logic. For example, a voter entering into a polling station, taking the 6 ballot papers and deciding that they will not vote for 5 of the electoral positions and only vote for the presidential position. You're getting that scenario?
Yes.
So that's why we were trying to ask ourselves, could it be in some areas that is what really happened?
Yeah.
And of course that will come out maybe during the scrutiny, and that's why the scrutiny will be important to understand what were the patterns of voting, what was really happening at the polling stations. Is it in some areas people only deciding to vote for the president alone, or others were deciding to vote for the other position? So that's a very important.
It's a very important point.
Yes.
And if my memory serves me right, the same question arose in 2017 where it was CJ Mwelu, DCJ Mwelu, and was it I think Smoking Wanjala who asked if you're given number of votes, ballot papers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you decided to say I'm going to vote for candidate X, where do the rest of the papers go?
Exactly. And you see, now that's what is the big question to everyone.
And it was a big issue. I remember most of the legal minds were like, you know, the ballot paper, this and that, some of the issues that were being raised. Again, in this one, do you think it would have affected the results somehow?
Yes, because you see, for example, even the reverse could happen. Someone decides to vote for the 5 positions but declines to vote for the presidential position. So then does it also show us that a person declining to vote is also exercising his constitutional or political right that he's choosing not to exercise it? You see, so there are various issues that especially this issue that will be of keen interest to understand the psychology of the voter or what really did occur at the polling station.
Okay. Last but not least, whether IEBC verified, tallied and declared results in accordance with Article 138(3)(c) and 138(10) of the Constitution.
Yes.
Okay. Those are some articles that I don't understand. I don't know what you mean by that Article 138(c).
Of course, you see, and I've been clearly saying it, that there are various procedures laid down by the Constitution on how results should be verified, tallied, and finally announced. You see, we know that the first thing that should happen is all results, the Form 34As, are received at the National Tallying Center.
Physically?
Yes, the physical forms. And if you look at one of the issues actually to be determined whether there is a difference between the Form 34As uploaded and the physical one, if you look at Section 39 of the Elections Act, it says where there is any discrepancy, it's the physical form that will be upheld. And you see, that's a process of verification.
Yes.
So once we have received this Form 34As at the National Tallying Center, we verify them. Okay, then we look at the Form 34Bs which were from the constituency tallying centers, okay? Whether the Form 34As for the specific constituencies actually tally with the Form 34Bs. Then the Form 34Bs are used to collate the results into the Form 34C.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is now used by the
Exactly. Yes, to announce the results. So that procedure, if it is not followed or if there are major discrepancies, then you see that can affect the outcome of the results. And that's why the Supreme Court, as a court listening to a presidential election petition, is allowed to nullify an election if the irregularities are so sufficient to affect the outcome of the results. That's why in law, procedure is everything.
In law, procedure is everything. And finally, whether the declared president-elect attained 50% plus one of all votes cast in accordance with Article 138(4) of the Constitution.
Yes, and you see that is very important because we have previously talked about the National Returning Officer, the National Returning Officer Chebukati being allowed to announce results if there are some results which have not been received, and he has reason to believe that they will not affect the outcome of the results.
Yes.
If we look at now these results, which we do not know what they were, if we look at them keenly and we see that no one attained the 50 plus 1, then what does it mean? That there was no clear winner, and then that's how the Supreme Court can arrive at a decision of a rerun, so that we can determine who was the clear winner of an election. So it's very important to understand that that constitutional threshold will set a very important, let me say, magnitude in this case, so that if there was no clear winner, we'll go back to the ballot.
And that is one of the prayers by the main petitioner, Honorable Raila Odinga, who says he wants the court to declare him as the winner. Can the court do that?
Yes, of course, if there is sufficient evidence that will show that he was the winner. And you see, that could be maybe through the scrutiny or through the various evidences that will be presented. But I think the Supreme Court will largely decline to do that. This is my honest, let me say my perception on that, because you see, if the evidence is not sufficient to maybe make them declare such a ruling, then they will actually give other alternatives that could still maybe arrive at the same outcome. So on declaring a person as the president-elect,
that will have to go back to the IEBC.
Yeah, it's a very tall order, you know.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court does not manage elections in this country. You see, so I think also they will try to check what are their mandates as a court, and what is the mandate of the Electoral Commission. So that they do not overstep, even as they try to create precedents and jurisprudence from the court.
Yes. Okay. I think we've exhausted the 9 areas that the courts will be dealing with. So far, we can bring them down. It's about technology, the process, that's the law of, I mean, the verification, and the 50% plus 1, that is the constitutionality, and the postponement of that case, whether it affected.
Actually, those are the 4 major issues.
The 4 major issues. So let me ask you this particular question as we come closer to this one. Do we really have a situation where Kenyans appreciate the fact that court plays a key role in determining how an election should be held in this country? Do we really have to be going to the Supreme Court each and every electoral cycle? Or it should be one touch and we're out?
You see, Victor, that's a very difficult question to answer, because now that brings in the element of electoral justice. Okay? You see, if someone is aggrieved by the outcome of the election, where should they run to?
Where should they run to?
Yeah, exactly, and that's the court. So, and we've already said here clearly that elections can never be perfect. So if someone feels that the elections are not conducted in the constitutional way, or if they feel that they are aggrieved, there should be a recourse, so that we ensure that whenever an issue arises regarding the outcome of the election, there's a clear laid out channel to which that issue can be actually channeled. Okay, but the major issue, and I think I've been saying that as Kenyans we have deep ingrained mistrust between us and the electoral body. You know, we can continue disbanding these electoral bodies, but if these people who are there do not adhere to the various laid down procedures and constitutional thresholds, then there will always be that culture of mistrust. Yes.
I know you'll be sitting somewhere watching. Will you be at the Supreme Court?
Today, maybe in the afternoon.
In the afternoon?
Yeah.
What should you expect? In the next 25 minutes, the sitting will begin.
Of course, the petitioner is the one who begins.
3 hours?
Yes. And we saw the battery of lawyers. And the one thing you should also note, in the consolidated petition, there are a number of petitioners apart from the apart from Raila and Martha Karua. So the councils will also, these other petitioners will be given an opportunity to address court.
Yes.
Okay. But the main petitioners, their councils are the ones who will begin.
Yeah.
Of course, they will address court on the major issues, the 9 issues. Not they will stick to, they'll have to address court on the 9 issues.
On the 9 issues,
they
right.
cannot now start compounding.
Even in the consolidated cases?
Yes, you see, once the court consolidated the various petitions, it now said these are the 9 issues which we are going to adjudicate upon in this court.
Right.
So any presentation that will be made today will be largely within these 9 issues. You see, because if the court left it to the advocates to decide which issues, they would talk about everything and anything concerning elections in this country.
Yes.
But these are the major issues which actually can help the court decide whether the election was held in a free and fair manner. Okay? So the petitioners begin their case, the advocates argue out their case, then the respondents are given their chance. Maybe tomorrow we'll see how the timings will play, and that's why I love that the CJ was very strict with the timings. Then there's a rejoinder where the petitioners now can answer to what the respondents have said. And of course the various court assistants, the other assisting staff at the present within the hearing will be assisting to take notes, because you don't want to misinterpret what anyone said.
Yes.
Okay? So of course that's what will happen moving forward.
It must be a very difficult moment for legal minds right now, because you'd imagine the number of cases, and this one you have to do this, you have to fix that loophole, we don't want to lose a case. Are you happy to be a lawyer at this particular point?
Let me say, I've always been happy to be a lawyer, because you see, it's at this time that lawyers are able to show that they actually support the Constitution and its mandates. Okay? And it's at this time that actually lawyers are able to show their skills better and display them. You know, sometimes some clients refute from paying lawyers. They think that they can actually do these things on their own. But you see, actually, representing a client is a very tedious task, because you have to think for the client, you have to read the law, you have to see which evidence is in support of your client and which things that would hinder your client's case from progressing forward. You see?
No, that's a lot of work.
Yes, it is a lot of work. And you saw the lorry of evidence that was presented when they were filing the petition.
Yes.
You see, so lawyers have to ensure that all these things have been adhered to, because at the end of the day, sometimes if you lose a case based on technicalities, the client will blame you. But we thank God our constitution says that justice will be administered without undue regard to procedural technicalities, and that was shown yesterday. And of course that's now showing the attitude of the court, that they want to appear to be fair, because you saw the DCJ allow that some affidavits which had been filed out of time, but so long it was not after 2 p.m. yesterday, they were to be admitted. And though the people who are to respond to those affidavits will not respond in a written format, they have permission to respond orally.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
So that is already showing that the court really wants to be seen to have done justice in this matter.
Okay. I will ask you this question, because when you see the learned friends sitting there at the bar, and they want to, the future of this country squarely belongs to them right now, not to the politicians. It's up to them now to decide. What do you really think now this portrays to the young and upcoming advocates who would want one day to sit at the bar? Talking of, people want to be, judges of the Supreme Court. You'll answer that. But let's talk about the judges, the 4 men and the 3 ladies, their vast experience. It's not the first time this is happening. in Kenya. In 2017, we went for an election. Some of them were there. CJ Maraga, of course, now already out. But do you really think this one put them in a very tricky situation, because now they'll have either to nullify or uphold an election? Do you think it's a pressure to them?
I mean, they know what their job comes with. They know what they signed up for.
Yes.
So even if, yes, there is pressure, they understand the duties that they owe to this country as now sitting as the Supreme Court judges, who are now being told, decide for us if this election was free and fair. You see, they understand the magnitude of their decisions. They understand the pressure that their work comes with. And I think for me, they are up to task. Because you see, like someone like Justice Lenaola was previously at the Constitutional and Human Rights Division. We've seen of course, the various judges also have various experience in other courts, other higher courts like the Court of Appeal. So, of course, they understand the magnitude of what their work comes with. They only can just do the best that they should do.
All right. As we come to a close to that, what now thinks is a picture to the legal minds who are also climbing up the ladder to be where they are, including you?
I think one major lesson, and I think not only to us legal minds, that Kenyans should understand, there's a large intersection between law and politics. Okay? And as a lawyer, if you're not aligning yourself to certain political stands, maybe it will be hard for you to also get business, because it's some of these politicians that have legal work. Okay? And apart from that, politics is also affected by the laws of the land. You see, so they intertwine in very many different ways, but now lawyers understand how they should be at the forefront in championing, for example, legislation review, because they're the ones who are trained to study the law. And if these laws fail, it's the lawyers who are practicing on the same law. So they should actually engage in legislation review. They should actually be at the forefront in championing for democracy, because if rights are infringed, lawyers are still the people who are renting.
You are quite familiar with that corridor?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
That is Milimani, if I get it right. That is Milimani Law Courts, just at the entrance down the stairs where will be the action will be taking place. That's Milimani Law Courts. Live pictures there. That signals that anytime from now, in the next 18 minutes or so, the court session will be on, and we expect. There you have them, you know, you call them a batch of lawyers.
Yes.
Just making their way to the courts there, ready to do their job. And of course, the whole country is now waiting to see how it's going to pan out, because at the end of the day, Kenyans did their bit. There was a contestation, and here we are today again, as was in 2017, and Kenyans now will be waiting for what will come out from the seven-laddered friends of the bar to give direction on how the country will go. All right. Okay, so on that note, let's now cross over to the Supreme Court, and Ben Chumba is on standby on what we should expect. Ben Chumba, if you can hear me, good morning. How is the situation like? The real battle begins in the next couple of minutes. What more can you tell us, Ben?
Asante sana mwenzangu Victor Olo, ukiwa upande wa kwanza wa studio. Mtazamaji, kwa siku ya pili mfululizo tunakuletea matangazo ya moja kwa moja kutoka mahakama ya Milimani, ambapo shughuli ya kuweza kusikiliza ile kesi iliyowasilishwa katika mahakama ya upeo na kiongozi wa Azimio la Umoja Raila Odinga kupinga uchaguzi uliotangazwa na tume ya IEBC kwamba William Ruto ndiye aliweza kuibuka mshindi katika matokeo ya uchaguzi wa urais. Kwa hivyo hii leo tunatarajia mawakili moja kwa moja wataanza kujadili kesi hiyo ili kuweza kukupa uchanganuzi. Siko peke yangu, Niko na mwenzangu hapa Sarafina. Sarafina, mambo vipi?
Poa sana chomba.
Naam, labda tu tueleze tu kwa muhtasari ni nini tunatarajia hii leo wakati ambapo majaji watapoingia kwenye mahakama saa 3 kamili.
Na mekitarajiwa kuwa hapo jana tuliweza kuona kile kikao rasmi kiliweza kufanyika ambacho kilikuwa kinaongozwa na jaji mkuu Martha Koome pamoja na lile jopo la majaji 7. Waliweza kukaa wakatoa hukumu kutokana na yale maombi yalikuwa yameombwa na wale washiriki katika kesi hiyo. Kwa hivyo inamaanisha kuwa kufikia hii leo basi kesi hiyo inaanza kusikizwa kirasmi kabisa hii leo. Na vile vile tuliona waliweza kutenga muda, wakaweza kutoa ratiba ya jinsi ambavyo kesi hiyo itaweza kuendeshwa, ambapo aliweza kusema kuwa yule aliyewasilisha kesi ambayo ni Raila Odinga na yule mgombea mwenza wake Martha Karua walipewa takriban masaa 3 waweze kuwasilisha mambo yao ama yale mambo vigezo vyao ambavyo wameweza kuvitumia kuweza kuwasilisha hii kesi. Kwa hivyo basi tutaona kuwa hiyo kesi itakapoanza kusikizwa tunatarajia kuweza kuona Raila Odinga na mawakili wa Raila Odinga na vile vile yule mgombea mwenza Martha Karua wataanza kuwasilisha kesi yao, alafu hapo baadaye pia kuna wale wenzao. Kumbuka kuwa hapo jana tuliweza kuona kuwa mwanzo hii kesi ikianza kulikuwa na kesi 9.
Ndio.
2 zikatolewa, moja ilikuwa ya yule mbunge Moses Kuria, ingine ilikuwa ya Ruben Kigame, zote zilitolewa. Kwa hivyo basi kwa sasa tumesalia na kesi 7 ambazo ziliweza kujumuishwa. Alafu sasa kuna wale wengine wadogo ambao walikuwa wamesalia. Ama si wadogo lakini pia wako katika hiyo kesi, lakini tuseme tu maombi yao si kama ya Raila Odinga ama Martha Karua. Basi pia walipewa muda ambao walipewa takriban dakika 30 waweze kuwasilisha. Alafu pia kando na hayo wale washtakiwa sasa kwenye kesi hiyo tuliweza kuona kuwa majaji hao waliweza kusema kuwa wale makamishna 4 wakiongozwa na ule naibu wa mwenyekiti Juliana Cherera, Masit, vile vile Wanderi na Nyang'aya waliweza kupewa takriban muda wa saa 1. Wana saa 1 waweze kugawana kati yao na vile vile watumie saa hilo basi kuweza kuwasilisha mambo yao wanayopinga ama wanayotaka mahakama iweze kuangazia. Alafu vile vile yule mwenyekiti wa tume huru ya uchaguzi na mipaka IEBC Wafula Chebukati, wakili wake vile vile aliweza kupewa muda ambao ilikuwa ni takriban ni masaa 3 ama ilikuwa saa 1, masaa 3 pamoja na tume huru ya uchaguzi ya IEBC. Alafu vile vile washtakiwa wengine ambao ni William Ruto ambaye alikuwa ametangazwa kuwa yeye ndiye alikuwa ameshinda tarehe 15. Vile vile pia aliweza kupewa muda wa takriban masaa 3 ambapo yeye pamoja na yule mgombea mwenza wake ambaye ni Rigathi Gachagua pia vile vile aliweza kupewa wote wamepewa takriban masaa 3. Kwa hivyo baada hapo pia tulimuona yule mwanasheria mkuu ambaye ni Attorney General pia aliweza kupewa muda wa dakika 30. Kwa hivyo hii leo kesi itakapoanza kusikizwa tunatarajia tuweze kuona mpangilio huo wakiwasilisha mambo yao kotini.
Unadhani kwamba hawa mawakili watazingatia muda ambao wamepewa kweli?
Inafaa wazingatie.
Kusema kwamba wanataka muda zaidi kwa sababu
jana
wao udai kwamba wanataka nyongeza ya muda. Unadhani huenda labda watafuatilia kabisa muda ambao wamepewa?
Mara nyingi huwa tunaona kwa kesi kama hizi katika mahakama ya juu inafika wakati ambapo mawakili wanaanza kusema muda hautoshi. Ama mtu mwingine anakuja anawasilisha kesi yake alafu muda wake ukisalia anasema mimi nampa huyu muda wangu aweze kutumia katika kuwasilisha maombi yake. Basi jana tuliweza kuona jaji mkuu akiweza kusema kuwa hilo halitakubaliwa wakati huu. Kama umeongea muda wako umebaki basi mahakama unachukua huo muda. Au utaweza kumpa mtu mwingine useme eti mimi nakuazima na kuazima muda wangu basi chukua uendelee kuwasilisha mambo yako. Mahakama ilikataa ikasema kuwa iwapo umepewa masaa 3 tuseme uwasilishe maombi yako ama mambo yako, masaa 3 yakiisha basi hiyo microphone itazimwa. Ndio.
Nadhani ni hatua ya busara ile kwa sababu utakumbuka kwa pia hao majaji wana muda fupi sana ikizingatiwa kwamba muda umekwisha. Zile siku 14 ambazo walikuwa wametengewa tayari imesalia karibu siku 4 peke yake na ndio kesi mwanzo inaanza kusikilizwa. Kwa hivyo nadhani ni wazo la busara tu tukiona majaji wale wakiwa wakali kidogo kwa masuala ya muda. Kuna baadhi ya wahusika ambao wangetaka sana jana kuhusishwa katika kesi hii. Tumeona aliyekuwa mgombea wa kiti cha urais Profesa Wajakoya akijaribu kuelezea mahakama kwamba angetaka aweze kupewa muda tu ama ahusishwe kama rafiki wa mahakama, lakini tukiona majaji pale waliweza kumwambia tu haiwezekani. Kwako unaona hatua hiyo ilikuwa ya busara?
Kweli, manake sasa mwanzo tukiangazia ile ibara ya 140 ya katiba imeratibu jinsi ambavyo kama unataka kuwasilisha rufaa yoyote ya kupinga uchaguzi wa urais ama matokeo ya urais, kuna ule muda ambao umetengwa. Na katika muda huo waliweza kuambiwa kuwa wana siku 7, takriban siku 7 kutoka siku ambayo matokeo yametangazwa kuweza kuwasilisha rufaa yoyote. Kwa hivyo kama yule profesa yule Ojakoya kama alikuwa na pingamizi yoyote, basi alikuwa na muda huo wa siku 7 kuweza kuwasilisha, alete maoni yake, alete mambo yake, aseme mahakama nataka muangazie 1 2 3. Basi hakuleta. Vile vile yule mwenzake pia David Maure alikuwa amesema pia iweze kujumuishwa katika kesi, alikuwa ameleta ombi la kujumuisha, lakini mahakama ikakataa. Mahakama ilisema kuwa ikiangazia muda ambao upo wana siku takriban 14. Kwa hivyo wakiweza walisema wataki interested parties katika rufaa hii. Kwa hivyo wote ambao walikuwa wameweza kuweka maombi yao kwamba waweze kuja kama interested parties hawajakubaliwa. Mmoja alikuwa huyo David Maure, alafu pia Ojakoya anasema kuwa aliweza kutajwa kwa mmoja wao washtakiwa wameweza kumtaja kama interested party. Kwa hivyo alikuwa anataka aweze kujumuisha, aweze kupewa muda aweze kuongea, ambapo sasa mahakama ilisema haitawezekana. Manake pia hata ukiangazia wale ambao walikuwa wamekubaliwa waje hapo kama marafiki wa kote, wale ambao wanawaita hapa amicus ama amici curiae, ndio wamekubaliwa. Tuliona chama cha wanasheria nchini LSK kimekubaliwa, vile vile ICJ wamekubaliwa, ICJ Kenya wamekubaliwa, na vile vile
kuna pia kundi fulani hapo
wale maafisa wa ICT ambao wanawakilishwa na Charles Kanjama.
Kwa hivyo wale tu ambao wanaweza labda kutoa maoni yao ambayo labda wanadhani huenda itasaidia mahakama kuweza kuamua kesi hii kwa urahisi, ndio nadhani tu walipewa nafasi.
Ndio wamepewa nafasi, manake hata hao marafiki wako ambao tumewataja ndio wapo kwenye kesi, lakini hawatapewa nafasi ama muda wa kuongea. Kitakachoangaziwa ni yale ama zile stakabadhi zao ambazo waliweza kuwasilisha mahakamani. Hizo ndizo ambazo zitaweza kutumika, lakini hawatapewa muda wa kuweza kuongea, manake hamna muda chumba. Sasa hizi tumesalia, umesema na takriban siku 3 ama 4, manake ifikapo siku ya Jumapili wanafaa kuwa wameshatoa hukumu. Kwa hivyo wakisema kila mtu aongee, basi hakutakuwepo na muda wa kutosha.
Jana katika ile kikao cha kutathmini kesi tuliona mawakili 3 wakijitokeza, wote wakisema wanawakilisha IEBC na kidogo kukatokea na
mtafaruku kidogo.
Kwa hivyo sijui wewe uliona vipi, hususan uamuzi ambao majaji waliweza kutoa hapo jioni baadaye?
Ule uamuzi chumba mimi niliona ulikuwa wakufaa kabisa, manake sasa vile vile tukizingatia, manake mimi wanaona ni kama mahakama huwa inazingatia sheria, inafuata sheria. Kama sheria imesema mambo ambayo yanafaa kuletwa hapa kotini katika mahakama ya juu ni mambo yanayohusiana na pingamizi za matokeo ya uchaguzi wa urais, hayo ndio mambo ambayo mahakama itazingatia. Basi ukianza kuleta mambo mengine hapa kando sijui nini, basi hujui nani anakuwasilisha hapo, kama kidogo unajaribu kujitoa ama kuwatoa hao majaji kutoka kwa mama ambao wanafaa kufanya. Kwa hivyo aliposema kuwa yule naibu wa jaji mkuu Philomena Mwili alivyosema kuwa jopo hilo limeamua wao wenyewe waweze kuangazia na kuamua, lakini akaamuru kuwa yule mwenyekiti akasema wale mawakili ambaye ilikuwa ni Githu Nkidhani alikuwa mwanasheria wa kitambo ataweza kuwasilisha, alafu vile vile akawaambia wale mawakili ambao walikuwa pia wamesema ule Mansur ambao walikuwa wamesema kuwa watawasilisha IEBC na vile vile makamishna, akawaambia kuwa sasa wale makamishna 4 ambaye ni Cherera, Masit, Wanderi na Nyang'aya, basi itabidi waweze wanakubaliwa kwanza kwa wakilisha. So lazima basi pia wawakilishe IEBC, manake kutakuwa na mtafaruko. Basi pia tutarajia leo, manake unajua chumba pia walikuwa wamesha file zile ambazo hapa kotini wanazita kama affidavits. Wote walikuwa wameshawasilisha. Upande huo wale makamishna 4 walikuwa wamewasilisha, upande huo mwenyekiti pia walikuwa wamewasilisha. Sasa tutasubiri pia tuone kama yote ataweza kutumika katika kusikizwa kwa kesi hii.
Na labda tu tuzungumzie upande wa wakilishi. Naona kwamba James Orengo atakuwa na wakilishi upande wa Azimio la Umoja pamoja na Paul Mwangi. Labda unaona kwamba wanaweza kutumia hii nafasi kwa njia gani? Kwa sababu unakuta kwamba ushahidi ambao wanasema wanayo ni kubwa sana. Wakati walipowasilisha kesi hii siku ya Jumatatu wiki iliyopita, uliona hata walikuja na gari kubwa kabisa wakisema wana ushahidi mkubwa, alafu baadaye tena wakasema kwamba wameweza kufupiza kwa sababu ya muda hadi ukurasa kama 30. Kwa hivyo wamepewa saa 3 na wanafaa kujieleza, kutoa ushahidi wao. Unadhani itakuwaje sasa? Kwa sababu huo muda kidogo unaonekana kidogo. Unaona kama itakuwa kibarua sana kwa mawakili kwenda moja kwa moja hadi maeneo ambayo tu wanadhani kuna shida.
Hata jana chumba mimi niliona kama walikuwa wanapinga, walikuwa naomba ongezewe muda wale majaji wakasema haitawezekana. Na kweli manake walipowasilisha rufaa yao walikuja na lori zima. Maboksi kama vile 40 na ngapi. Lakini sasa pia ukizingatia zile sheria ambazo ziliweza kutolewa na mahakama ya juu kabla ya kuanza kusikizwa kwa kesi hii, waliweza kusema kuwa ndipo kuzuia watu kuja na vitu vingi sana mahakamani. Wakasema kuwa hizo stakabadhi ambazo unafaa kuwasilisha zilipewa muda. Wakasema mwezi ufai kupitisha, ilikuwa ni kurasa 40. Basi tulipoona hiyo rufaa ambayo baada ya wao kuwasilisha mara kwanza, baada ya siku kama 2-3 hivi, sasa waliweza kuleta ile ambao walikuwa sasa wamepunguza kidogo. Wakapunguza hizo zote hadi zikafikia takriban karatasi I think zilikuwa 38. Sasa hiyo itakuwa afadhali, maanake sasa hata kama wamepewa masaa tuseme 3, itabidi sasa watumie hizo karatasi ama hizo stakabadhi ambazo ni kurasa 38 kuweza kuwasilisha. Vile vile hapo awali mirengo yote ama pande zote zilikuwa na mawakili wengi sana. Kwa mfano mrengo wa Azimio la Umoja ilikuwa na mawakili takriban 35 na 6. Alafu mrengo wa Kenya Kwanza ulikuwa na mawakili 53. Haya, tukiangalia Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC ilikuwa na mawakili zaidi ya 26. Basi jana mahakama ikasema haitawezekana. Pande zote zinakubaliwa tu kuweza kuwasilisha mawakili 4 ndio iweze kutoshea hapo. Vile vile ikizingatiwa kuwa pia kuna hilo tuna COVID-19 bado hapa nchini. Kwa hivyo nafasi pia ni finyu pale ndani. Kwa hivyo akasema hao mawakili wote wakiingia pale basi itakuwa tafash. Wakasema kwa hivyo basi mawakili wakapunguzwa. Vile vile stakabadhi ambazo zitaweza kutumika lazima zizingatie zile sheria za mahakama ya juu ambazo zilisema kuwa huwezi kupitisha zaidi ya hapa. Manake hata hapa awali katika rufaa zingine ambazo zilikuwa zinapinga uchaguzi ama matokeo ya rais, tulikuwa tunaona mtu anafika mahakamani na stakabadhi hata zaidi ya sijui 700 mangapi. Na muda ndio huo wa siku 14. Sasa itawezekanaje aweze kuwasilisha hizo zote, pande zote ziweze kupinga, baada hapo tena hukumu iweze kuangazia hayo yote, andika muda haupo. Basi mimi naona kama inafaa kabisa.
Ni kweli, kwa sababu nadhani itakuwa jambo la busara sana ikiwa wao mawakili wanapowasilisha, kwa sababu hapa ni uchaguzi ambao uliweza kufanyika kwa siku nzima na tume ya IEBC kafanya ile hesabu yake kwa muda karibu wa siku 5 ama hata 6, lakini wao majaji hawana huo muda. Nadhani kwangu ingekuwa jambo la busara sana hawa mawakili wa Raila Odinga wakwende moja kwa moja hadi kwa masala ambayo wanaona kuna utata. Waambie majaji hapa kulikuwa na tashwishi, hapo kulikuwa na tashwishi na hapa kulikuwa na tashwishi. Basi hao majaji watatenga huo muda, basi waende moja kwa moja hadi maeneo ambayo wanasema kwamba kulikuwa na tashwishi. Kwa sababu labda tu kwangu naona tu wakiambia mahakama wapitie shughuli nzima ya uchaguzi, kidogo majaji watajipata katika njia panda.
Hamna muda. Vile vile jana pia waliweza kutoa ama kusema wataangazia masala 9 kwenye hiyo rufaa. Kwa hivyo pia wale washtakiwa ama wale waliowasilisha rufaa itabidi pia wamezingatia katika mawasilisho yao, itabidi wamezingatia hayo masala 9. Ndio kujizatiti kabisa kuweza kutoa. Mmoja wapo alikuwa anasema wataangazia teknolojia ambayo ilitumika, wataangazia vile vile zile fomu za 34A zile ambazo zilikuwa pale kwenye vituo vya kupiga kura, zile ambazo ziliweza kuwekwa kwenye huo mfumo wa KIMSKIT, zile ambazo ziliweza kuletwa na hao wasimamizi wa vituo vya kupiga kura hadi pale Bomas. Na vile vile wakasema wataweza kuangazia iwapo ikumbukwe kwamba baada ya kutangazwa kwa matokeo kuna yale maeneo ambayo waliweza kupiga kura ni jana majuzi waliahirisha uchaguzi. Basi pia walikuwa nasema kuwa hilo jukumu ama huo uamuzi ambao uliweza kutolewa na Tume Huru ya Uchaguzi na Mipaka IEBC iliweza kuwakandamiza kimpango. Kwa hivyo pia mahakama ikasema itaweza kuangalia kama kweli, alafu pia ikasema kwa itaweza kuangazia kama, manake kuna yule mmoja wa wale waliowasilisha rufaa ambaye kwa sasa ni seneta wa Busia, Okiya Omtata. Pia aliweza kusema kuwa hadhani kama mtu yeyote aliweza kufikia 50% plus 1 inavyotakikana kikatiba.
Ndio.
Kwa hivyo basi wakasema kuwa vile vile watakuwa naangazia kuweza kuona kama hilo pia liliweza kutimizwa. Kwa hivyo tunatarajia tuweze kuona kuwa kesi itakapoanza kusikizwa wataweza tu kuangalia hayo masala, na kwa hivyo basi hata kwa huo muda ambao uliweza kutengwa itakuwa fadhali kuweza kusaidia kutoa hukumu.
Mtazamaji, ni uchanganuzi tu wa moja kwa moja ambao tunakuletea kutoka mahakama ya Milimani hapa, ambapo kikao cha leo kitaanza rasmi, huku mawakili wanaowakilisha mrengo wa Kenya, mrengo wa Raila Odinga ambao ni Azimio la Umoja, watakuwa wanawasilisha ushahidi wao. Na wameweza kupewa masaa 3 kuweza kuelezea mahakama ni kwa nini wanapinga matokeo ya uchaguzi wa urais ambao litangazwa na mwenyekiti wa tume ya IEBC Wafula Chebukati. Kwa hivyo basi wamepewa masaa 3, alafu hapo baadaye pia tume ya IEBC itakuwa inapewa fursa ya kuweza kutoa majibu yake na kuweza kutetea vikali ushindi wa William Ruto ambaye ni rais mteule. Alafu pia hapo baadaye rais mteule William Ruto atakuwa pia naye anapewa masaa 3 ili kuweza kujitetea. Alafu kisha baadaye, mtazamaji, tutaona pia labda upande wa Azimio pia wakiongezewa muda waweze kujibu tu labda masala ambayo wanadhani kwamba yalikuwa yamesalia, ambayo yalikuwa yamejibiwa na upande wa IEBC pamoja na Kenya Kwanza. Hapa tuko na mwenzangu Sarafina Robi hapa tukijaribu tu kufanya uchanganuzi kidogo kuona ikiwa mambo itakwenda vipi. Kumbuka wakati wote kutoka sasa wale majaji watakuwa wanaingia katika mahakama. Tayari mawakili wamewasili. James Orengo nimemwona tayari, Paul Mwangi tayari nishawaona wamewasili katika majengo ya mahakama hapa tayari kuweza kuwasilisha kesi yao. Sarafina, jana nilikuwa natarajia sana ningeona wale majaji wakiwa wamevalia sare zao za kazi lakini sikuona. Ilikuwaje?
Kulikuwepo na nini ilikuwa imetolewa, ilani ilikuwa imetolewa hapo awali, wakasema kuwa katika kikao hicho basi si lazima mtu avalie rasmi. Lakini tulimwona mtu mmoja alikuwa amevalia rasmi. Nilimwona Profesa Wajakoya.
Kweli nilimwona.
Alikuja amevalia mavazi yake yote ya kirasmi ya kuingia pale kotini. Lakini kutokana na ilani hiyo basi I think nadhani ndio maana hao mawakili wengine hawakuweza kufika hapo kama wamevalia hivyo hizo sare zao. Na vile vile wale majaji, lakini hii leo tunatarajia waweze kuvalia. Ndio.
Ni kweli kabisa, kwa sababu wengi walikuwa wanatarajia sana wale majaji watapoingia wanaingia wakiwa wamevalia zile sare zao nyekundu hivi nyeupe, lakini haikuwa hivyo.
Na zile nywele zao nyeupe.
Ndio. Labda tuzungumzie tu swala la usalama. Unaona usalama umekuwa vipi katika eneo hili la mahakama ya Milimani? Ukiona kwamba jana kulikuwa na jamaa alikuwa kwenye mitandao ya kijamii akiwa amebebwa juu.
Hayo yanafanyika siku zote tukiwa na hizi kesi kubwa za mahakama ya juu. Wapata tu mtu mmoja tu anafika tu ghafla. Alafu cha kushangaza ama cha mno kabisa ni kuwa wao wanakuja moja kwa moja hadi mahali ambapo wanahabari wamekaa. Manake yule jana alikuja akaingia hapo akaanza tu kuzua rabsha. Anasema lazima mnisikize, mimi sijui simwogopi nani. Nikamwambia basi wewe kama unatetesi mbona ukumpelekea Koome? Akasema anatambia mimi lazima sijui mnisikize sijui nini. Basi ikabidi tuwaite wale walinda usalama ambao walikuja vile vile wakatusaidia kumtoa nje. Lakini nikiangazia usalama sawa hapa katika mahakama ya Milimani, ikizingatiwa na siku za kawaida ambazo siku zote watu tuko hapa tukiangalia ama tukiangazia kesi mbalimbali, usalama umeimarishwa sana. Maanake hata kuingia hapa saa hizi si rahisi. Lazima uwe hauna lazima tuwe na kadi ile ya ofisini ambapo unafanya kazi. Kuna ile kadi pia ambayo tumeweza kupewa na idara ya mahakama ambayo inatumika ndipo uweze kuingia hapa ndani. Alafu pia ukiangalia katika malango yote polisi wako hapo wanaangalia, kwa hivyo kuingia hapa si.
Alafu pia naona kuna majina.
Kuna majina vile vile. Mwanzo hapo jana ulikuwa ukifika walikuwa kwanza wanaangalia hiyo karatasi. Kama jina lako alipo basi ndio hivyo. Hata kama wanakujua wanakuambia ndio tunakujua, watakuona.
Lakini jina lako lazima tuhakikishe
hapa mama. Lazima jina lako liwepo, lazima uwe na hiyo kadi ambayo inatakikana. Ndipo ruhusiwa kuingia hapa ndani. Ambapo pia chumba nkidhani inafaa hivyo, manake pia ukiangazia kuwa muda ambao umesalia ni mchache sana. Kwa hivyo watu wakianza kuja hapa wengi sana alafu anze kuzoazogo hapa, basi itakuwa vigumu sana hata kwa majaji kuweza kuendesha kikao hichi.
Mara nyingi tunaposikiliza zile kesi za kupinga matokeo ya uchaguzi ya viti kama vya ubunge, gavana, mara nyingi